Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 164. My name is NBZ and I'm joined by, some would call him a man. I kind of look at him as just like a ball of rice because that's all he eats these days apparently. It's Bally. How you doing, Bally? You just posted a Twitter picture of this giant bag of rice that you've apparently got through in 2 months. Do you eat anything that isn't rice?
Sometimes. So yeah, I worked out that one portion of rice costs 25p, and that me and Caroline ate like on average 2 a day between us. So I guess 1 each a day for the space of about just over 2 months. And I went to the Asian supermarket today and got my second bag of 10 kilograms of rice.
You might as well just buy like 3 or 4 at once, to be fair. You know?
Good luck carrying that back. Like 10 kilograms on my back as it is like heavy.
Did you not take a car? You didn't take a car with you? It was close enough that you can just walk?
It's a bit difficult with Leith walking where that is, but
yeah, it's fair enough.
It's hard, but yeah, highly recommend getting a bag of rice. It's the cheap way to have carbohydrates.
Yes,
I'll tell you
absolutely.
that for free. Yeah, really enjoying the Japanese cooking.
Cool. Well, I think both of us have been cooking some. I'd made some of the best fucking chicken I've had in my life recently.
Good.
And yeah, we're all about that. We're all about that type of food. It's my favorite.
You just have a few days where you come up and we just make a series of dishes like
we just have a cook-off, basically.
Have a cook-off, exactly.
Yeah. Sounds good. We'll do that one day, and we'll probably just record it.
We'll record it.
That's enjoyment of people. But yeah, we are not here to talk about food or rice or anything today. Here to talk about video games, the magical world of video games, and there's lots to talk about. Bally, do you want to tell the folks what we're talking about today?
For the first segment, we are going to be talking about the games that we have been playing. The second segment will be some of your listener emails that you sent in. And then the third segment, it's a bit of a coin flip at the moment. Heads says that we're going to talk about the Animal Crossing Direct that just happened. And Tails says that a Nintendo Direct will be announced tomorrow. And we'll talk about that later on in the week and edit that together into the show.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Everyone's like, is there going to be another Direct, even though they did an Animal Crossing one last week? There's smoke on the street, potentially, but who knows these days.
Are we at panic stations yet?
Not quite.
I'm going to be at panic stations once Animal Crossing comes out, I've decided. Yeah,
we'll give Matt Bellamy a call, and he can play us through the panic station as we make it there at some point. But for now, I think a lot of people are contented that at least there was some Animal Crossing stuff, and I think it's cool to dig into that, so we will talk about it in the last part of the show. But let's kick things off with the games we've been playing recently. And Bally, you've played a few things. I've played quite a few things, so we've got a lot to chat about.
Yeah, so the first game I want to talk about is Ori and the Blind Forest that I have been playing on Switch. This is a game you've been telling me for a long time to play.
Well, not really, because you've never had a way to play it.
Well, it only came out on Switch end of last year?
Right, last year it came out.
Right, so you've not been nagging for quite as long.
No, but I'm like, it's one of my favourite games ever made. Like, I think it's just a phenomenal piece of art that deserves just all the praise it gets and is just amazing. So, I knew you would play it when it came to Switch. It was just a question of when.
I'm a big fan of Metroidvanias, but I'll be honest, I've never had a Metroidvania that has stood out in my mind as this is my sort of perfect Metroidvania. I know you've played more than me, Amiza, but out of the ones I've played, so like Guacamelee, Hollow Knight, Axiom Verge, off the top of my head, all the Metroid games, obviously, like, there's not one of them where I'm like, that is definitely my favorite Metroidvania, and I think that slot has been filled by this game. This game is perfectly paced in my mind, where I side much more with the Metroid. I like the Metroid Fusion pace of a game. However, it's too linear, and then Ori just makes it ever so slightly more non-linear to the point where I'm happy. Where I think a game like Hollow Knight is just a little bit jumping into the deep end at points.
Oh, very much so.
And it's like, I am lost in the dark and there are enemies and I don't have a map and I'm dead again and again and again, and that's just too harsh. So I think This game is more linear than it is non-linear, but I love that about it. And I felt motivated to go back and get all the collectibles in this game because the movement feels incredible. The world is gloriously... It's hand-painted, isn't it, right? Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think every single piece of the background is hand-painted. There's no repeating assets as you often get with those types of games. And so... yeah, it's kind of just remarkable. I think Ori, we were talking about this, and the enemies in Ori, I believe, are actually 3D models, but they're shaded and painted in a way that they look like they're 2D. You can tell with some of the, like especially the giant bird, you can tell that is a 3D object, but for the most part, it blends so seamlessly that it's kind of hard to really tell and distinguish.
Yeah, and like the story is very... To be honest, the story's kind of hard to understand at points. It's kind of like, is it going into the tree? Is it going into the bird? And then, so I kind of like even looked up the plot after beating the game and was like, oh, right, that's what was happening then.
But it's one of those games that having played it multiple times now I do understand what's going on, but you're right. Like, first time through, I wasn't super, not that I wasn't engaged by it, but I think that it's hands-off enough in the way that sometimes there will be text, but sometimes that text is a little bit poetic almost. Like, it's not specific about what's happening.
Apparently the text is like the tree speaking to you.
Yes, that is the voice of the tree. Because Ori is technically like a leaf from the tree, or like a spirit from the tree who falls away in the storm at the beginning. And that's why, Ori's alive and all the rest of his brothers and sisters are not. Things like that,
So yeah, the story is definitely like a secondary thing in this game versus just the awe and splendor of the world, and like the music is unbelievable. There's so much piano. I just love it so much. Like I always remember like Hollow Knight did have a lot of piano, but it was a lot more dark and gothic sounding and like classical in its voice. And obviously the piano is a classical instrument, and this game is very much classical as well, but this game feels a lot more hopeful.
Right. I think it does a really good job with leitmotif, right? Like, that is a thing that I praise the Xenoblade soundtrack for a lot, is, you have this theme that is weaved through so many different tracks. Ori does that stupendously well. Like, so clearly, that kind of core theme, you hear it in so many different variations and ways throughout the game.
But this game hits out the park on so many levels for me, where it's like, right, music, tick, like general sound and other sound effects, tick, like story, tick, like it's good even though it's a bit hard to understand, and then the art, obviously a huge tick, the pacing, massive tick, the whole length of the overall game I absolutely loved. It took me about 11 hours to 100%, which I think is a real sweet spot for like a Metroidvania style game. Honestly, the map doesn't feel too small, doesn't feel too big. It feels like just this right level of exploration, but also linearity.
And how do you feel about the map itself and the way that it shows things to you, and like it's the way that it helps you read the environment essentially?
Yeah, like here's a waypoint in the distance, work out how to get there, and like that works generally, I think, in Metroidvania.
Well, I mean more so that like the map itself artistically makes it very easy to read where different places are, and you will know where something is in relation to one another, and like be able to remember, that's that place.
Yeah, no.
Like the way that it's colored as well, as like, it's like a small version of the area that you've been in essentially.
Yeah, totally. Like it's really clear, right? This leads to that leads to there, and I really like this. Like I do have a couple of frustrations with the skill tree in the game, where a lot of the skills, it's quite confusing what they actually do, and the names of attacks and charge souls and all. Like there's a long list of I mean, that's something you can learn and get used to. It's just while you're initially going in the early stages of the game, where it's quite important what you want to upgrade at what stage. By the end of the game, I managed to complete the skill tree before facing like the final sequence. But there are parts that are a little confusing. But one aspect I love about the skill tree is one of some of the things you unlock later just flat out reveal where collectibles are, and like I love
they just put them on the map for
exactly
you,
so you can just go back and collect them. The general feeling of this game, like the platforming feels, it's very floaty, but not in like it's not as precise as perhaps like a Celeste, but it works better for what this game is going for, where the style of what the platforms are, the wall jumping, the fact you can eventually just climb up the walls, it works perfectly for this game. Like, and I think you had said a lot about the bash ability.
It is one of those, like, it's a multi-purpose ability in the same way that we talk about. The Beetle from Skyward Sword is the one I always go to. But I how...
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about bash generally. I think it is one of the best abilities in any game, period. Like, it
absolutely.
It completely revolutionizes how you think about the world, and there are parts of the game where you are essentially like flying through areas where it's bash off this, glide down there, bash, wall climb here, and you're almost like rubbing your stomach and patting your head in this weird kind of and then you got to climb, bash, and then you don't want to do that, and then you got to kill that enemy and to land on here, and it's all kind of like getting your brain to work in a platforming way that another game hasn't really done before, and it feels really fresh
because you're just chaining things together. Because you can bash off of enemies and off of projectiles, it gives you so much within the environment that is interactable. And so you'll be like bash, chain, attack this, and then you'll float with the feather at the same time and drop and wall climb and boost up. And by that final tool set you have with the air dash and everything is like you're unstoppable essentially. And it's not in the same way that a Super Metroid is, where you have the screw attack and space jump unstoppable.
No, it's in a very precise way for this game where, yes, you are becoming more powerful both defensively and offensively, but ultimately the upgrades you feel the most upgrade your ability to traverse the world. So yes, sure, the spin attack in like Metroid will make it easier to get around the world, but ultimately you're mainly powering up like Samus's power to just sort of power through enemies, and you don't...
Yeah, it's the screw attack that just shreds things, essentially.
Right, and this game doesn't feel like it's just simply handing you a screw attack to just completely obliterate the world. It's like, no, actually you're just getting the ability for like a triple jump. The triple jump is so subtle and actually doesn't make a huge difference, but it's enough to make you feel that extra level of confidence when you want to kind of speed through an area you've already been to or something. Like, it's a very nice little thing to throw in there.
Yeah, like, and when I did my double jump video, I was like, okay, well, I've got to rate Ori on just its double jump, right? And actually the double jump's not amazing, right? It doesn't have a huge...
I mean, the double jump really, in some ways, is kind of bash, or the ability to throw a soul ball thing and then bash off of it, which I just think is the most unbelievably awesome. And I tweeted at the time, it's like a Mario Odyssey level of throwing your hat and jumping off your hat kind of level of platforming.
And I actually only discovered I could do that this playthrough I did this year, because first part when I was going through the game previous times, obviously
it didn't exist.
Well, first time I played it didn't exist because it's part of the definitive edition area that got added when the game got updated. But also, I tended to just forget that area was there because I was so used to playing it just the normal way. And so I'd always get to it at the end of the game, like at the very end of the game before the final thing. I'd be, oh, right, do the definitive edition area. And by that point, you have the ability that lets you just boost off the ground, like rocket yourself up. So I could get through areas like that without having to use that mechanic. And so like I discovered that I think you can go listen to the show where I talked about it earlier this year, and I say that thing that I discovered that, which is pretty cool.
This game just did all these things so perfectly for me. And
how do you feel about the save system? Because that's something
I love it.
About it.
I really love it. There is that ever so occasional moment where you're like, oh, damn, I didn't save, and then that's just the game teaching you in a semi strong way, oh yeah, you need to keep saving.
It's another way in which I feel this game was custom made for me, because there are so many people out there who got annoyed with Ori because they kept forgetting to save. I'm a serial saver. Like, because of my experience back on the GameCube days of like having corruption and stuff like that, I save all the fucking time. Like, I'm incessant about it in a way that probably would drive some people crazy. So like, it like fits my kind of OCD in a way that just works. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I love that one of the abilities you can get quite early on is that you get a little bit of health every time you make a save point or something.
Yes, that's a great ability.
It's like an incentive, and that even powers up a little bit more later in the skill tree. And very quickly you get used to right, I'll save like this, and then balancing your health and your ability to use souls, because the souls, I think they're called souls. Am I thinking of
it's
Hollow
like
Knight?
energy, I think, energy gauge.
Energy, yeah, they call it
Energy
energy, but then that's
cells.
not your life, which is there's stuff like that is a little confusing with this game,
Sure,
and that's
yeah.
just something you can learn and get used to. But the blue balls and the green balls,
Right.
The green balls are your health. The blue balls are like the things you charge
Exactly,
up and
yes.
use save points.
Because
So,
like some of them, you actually have like a door where you have to insert 6 balls in order to open those.
That took me a little bit of time to work out, and then I went back and oh right, of course, and yeah, so
because if you don't have enough when you walk up to them, it just kind of just like vibrates and doesn't
fizzles
do
out
anything.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I also really love the escape sequences in this game. There is one of the elements where I was quite surprised. I think it's the wind element where there isn't an escape sequence. I was quite surprised by that.
What do you mean?
Well, there's 3 elements, but there's only 2 escape sequences, and then it's only
There's 3 escape sequences because the second one is the ice area.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The final escape sequence is actually the end of the game. It's not the
Right.
third element.
Oh, right. I see what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, so you go to the Ginzo tree, you do the first escape sequence, you go to the second element, and you do in the ice area, and you do the second escape sequence, you go to the third area, and then there's no escape sequence.
Right. I guess I just associate escape sequence with dungeons because the top of the volcano area where you get the element isn't a dungeon. It's more just an open area versus the final area, which is the dungeon. So like each of the 3 escape sequences is linked to a internal area. You go inside the door of it and it shuts, and then you do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, the finale, like those escape sequences, like I agree with you. I think the Ginzo tree is the most impactful because of the way that game starts and builds to that moment, and is probably still the part of the game that stays with me the most, having beaten it now. It's just like, it's almost like the most perfect sort of 2 to 3 hours of video game, just as a play from the start of Ori till the end of the Ginzo tree.
You should go back and watch that Mark Brown video on that sequence, because he did an entire video breaking down the Ginzo tree.
Yes, I need to do that, absolutely. And I really enjoyed like the final sequence as well, and there's sort of like 6 areas in that final dungeon kind of style thing that you have to do all sorts of crazy platforming to avoid lava and sort of things. I thought that was really impressive.
I have like a way that I do that last dungeon where like, okay, I have to get to the top and then go side to side all the way down.
Oh, you go side to side? I just went down one side to the top and then down the other side.
Yeah, no, because if you go all the way down, then you're like, oh, I have to get all the way back up again.
That's
so
true.
yeah.
And what was I going to say? Yeah, I just really loved that. Like, for me, yes, I died a lot. I think I died somewhere between 300 and 400 times. I can't remember. But the difficulty was perfect in my view. Like, it wasn't like completely out of my like ability, even on those escape sequences. It was just like, right. And even if it took me like 15, 20, 30 times, it still felt like this is just right. And this is obviously someone who has played like quite a bit of Celeste, and like I do love a platforming challenge, especially in 2D, and this game just seemed to fit that perfectly, where yes, a game like Hollow Knight has platforming parts, but I've not really played a Metroidvania that has such bigger emphasis on platforming as this game, and it was really refreshing to see. And the fact that there aren't like formal bosses. Yes, there's a couple of areas that we spoke about on WhatsApp where you're kind of jumping around next to an enemy firing. Yeah,
those, I will admit, those are the weaker parts of the game.
But as you said over WhatsApp, it's literally only the first one that I found mildly frustrating, because then the second one, you can just bash the ability that attacks back into it, and that feels kind of fun.
Right.
Like, it's just the first one that is just a little bit weaker. And I know that, like, not even mentioned it yet, but the second game is coming out next month, and the trailers for that seems a lot more boss focused, as much as I hope that game will still have escape sequences and kind of like escape sequence boss style things, a bit like the bird in this game.
Right, it almost looks like it's combining those two ideas to some degree, so I'm curious as to how that goes. And from what we've seen of that game, there's a bunch of weapons that have been added, like there's a bow and arrow, there's like a grappling hook style thing that looks incredible. So I think they're going to go for it, really, and try and push those boundaries.
Even if that game moves a little bit further away from the pure platforming Metroidvania that I think this first game is, I'm personally okay with that in the sense that this game is still going to exist, and like
Right, totally.
this is still like a near, or in many ways, it's actually like a perfect game in some senses.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm happy it exists, and if they want to try something that's a bit crazier and different in the second game, that's also great too. Like I'm not tied to series that have to keep repeating what they're already successful at, you know. So
Yeah.
and yeah, I was so blown away by this game. It made me like think, God, I should get an Xbox and get that second game.
Just for that game.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I
dear.
did. I bought an Xbox. I bought an Xbox One S, and I'm here to announce it on the show.
Are you fucking kidding me right now? Did you? Wait, what?
So I was midway through Ori, and the first half of Ori made me want to play Ori 2 on launch, and I thought,
motherfucker!
what
Tell me shit.
what's the best way of doing that? And I checked out online, like the Xbox One S all digital is like £170, and I was
Right.
like, that's pretty cheap. And then the One S non-digital, so it's still got a disc drive, was only like 15 quid more, like 185 quid. And I thought, well, I live in the UK. Amazon, we can always get like cheap hard copy games in the future, so I might as well get the disc drive version, you know. So yeah, bought an Xbox, came the next day.
Fuck,
So
Bally.
I'm all signed up to Game Pass,
You just
ready
did
for
the
Ori
thing.
2.
You just did the thing where I was going to be like, I just beat this game, but I'm not telling you about it beforehand.
Yeah, I took it to the next level.
You took it to the next level. Jesus Christ.
But it's not just Ori that was part of that decision.
Oh, of course not.
I was very
yeah.
encouraged by what had been said before, that like there won't be any exclusives to Series X for 2 years. So
Yep.
I know that like all the first party games are going to be
Game Pass,
day
man.
one.
Fucking Game Pass.
There's a bunch of strong third party games, both like AAA and indie, that are on Game Pass that I would play in the next little while anyway on a system like Switch. So I have slightly doubled up myself a little bit on a handful of games like Grease and Witcher 3 and the Gardens Between. But other than those three, like I just think I'm going to be playing so many games indie AAA this year that come out that I just think I am saving money in the long term. And I'm getting to play Ori, and I've just played like 6 hours of Forza Horizon 4, and it's fantastic. And I'd really like to play all the Halo games. So like I want to try like probably play like Halo Reach, and then try and play like them in line with UMBZ when like maybe ahead of Infinite or whatever. And
I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit speechless right now because you just fucking dropped this bomb out of nowhere.
And yeah, I just think it's a good deal for this point in time, and I play enough games where I think it's very much monetarily justified, and I'm now across all three platforms, which feels good.
How does it feel to ride around Edinburgh in Forza?
Forza is fantastic. I'll probably play a lot more of that game and talk about it next time. But in short, it feels incredible to be back into like driving games. How
fucking weird is it? It's like driving down Princess Street and just like looking at the environment. It's bananas.
Awesome.
It's so weird.
And I should say, like, I'm only signed up to Game Pass. So like I've got a thing that will sign me up to Gold for a free month, but I've not bothered to use it yet if we want to.
Oh right, that's mainly for competitive online or whatever.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And like I have very little interest in playing like Sea of Thieves or what's the new Overwatch style thing?
Bleeding Edge.
Yeah. I've like got really little. I'd rather just go back and play the Halo.
Bally, you can play Bleeding Edge with me now. It's cross-play on PC and Xbox.
We could do that. Yeah, I've got a Gold
man.
Pass. So I don't think I'll ever like upgrade to Gold, but I'll definitely sit on Game Pass. And yeah, so I'm getting this month free where I'm going to play Forza and then Ori, and then it's going to be £8 a month, which I think I'll easily make up. So
for sure. Yeah. No question. Then, play fucking Sunset Overdrive, my dude. Like,
I was thinking like Hellblade, Sunset Overdrive, the Halo games. I'll probably do Halos before I do like the Gears games, but I definitely want to try both. And then there's just like there's like Slay the Spire. Games like
that is on there, isn't it?
There's like a lot of games that have come out in the last few years. that I need to give a go. Like GTA 5's there as well if I want to give it a go.
That's why you were talking about that earlier. God damn it, Bally.
And the whole like unboxing process was super seamless. The actual bit of kit is huge and it's just so dense. Like I can't get over how heavy and dense the thing is. One drawback that the system has that I was really surprised by, because this system came out in 2018, is the controller still uses AA batteries.
Yeah, that is a baffling thing.
Which is the most baffling thing. But it's also got like a charging slot. So I looked this up, and you can buy Microsoft branded chargeable batteries that essentially turn it into like a PS4 controller that charges up. Or you can literally play with it plugged in. Or you can just use AA batteries, which I'm just going to do. And I guess they last for however long. So,
wow.
Yeah. Weird.
Cool. Well, that's a segment of the show I didn't expect. Barry bought an Xbox.
I was like, I'm going to announce it on the show and I'll talk about Ori.
Yeah.
And then Ori 2. So anyway, and so I'm probably not, as a result, going to pick up, say, Final Fantasy 7. Like, I think I basically decided, why spend 50 quid on that one? I could spend 180 on this and play Ori and go down that rabbit hole rather than play a game that might not be my cup of tea, because I'm a bit skeptical about Final Fantasy 7 when there's so many other big games coming out this year.
Fair enough.
So yeah.
Cool. That's very interesting.
It's good to get that off my chest.
that I'm sure. Like, God, how long has that been stewing?
So, yeah, and it's made me go on this whole train of like, I watched Xbox's presentation from E3
now everything's
year.
like coalescing to me, because you've been asking me a lot about Microsoft first party studios and like things like that, and I'm like, yes, but I've never really shown this much interest in Xbox before. I wonder why.
Don't get me wrong, I was always interested. I always thought I'd probably do it at some point, and I don't think I'm going to be day one on a Series X, so that just
no.
So that would be a lot of money. And I'd have to wait to play Ori 2. That seemed like the worst of both worlds.
Oh, totally.
Whereas playing the Xbox One S, like, there's a whole library there. They've obviously, I think, Sony have far better, more numerous exclusives, but there's still some exclusives in there that I think are really worth playing. And there's even stuff like, I was looking it up, like Way to the Woods coming out this year.
Yeah, that is,
It's like something.
Also,
Spiritfarers.
Right, that got announced at a Microsoft conference, but also
Everwild, made by Rare.
Yeah, that's going to be Rare's new game. But also Yacht Club. Yacht Club are publishing a game called Cyber Shadow, which kind of looks Messenger-esque, but looks really good, like a 2D side-scrolling game. And that is coming to Game Pass Day 1 as well, which I'm looking forward to, Cyber Shadow.
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff, and if you just look at the games I played last year, and if you'd matched that to Game Pass, I probably would have saved quite a bit of money last year. And I thought, I'm probably going to play in the same style for at least the next few years, so why not just do it this way? So, yeah, I just thought it was a good time, and yeah, Ori pushed me over the edge. It had to be.
Wow.
I had to do it.
Cool. Well, let's get back to some Nintendo then. After we took that trip off the edge. You've been playing a game that we got a review code for from WayForward, a co-op game, which is why I sent it to you, because I am on WayForward's press list, and one of the games I'm going to talk about in a bit was a review code I got last year. But tell me about Vitamin Connection and what the hell it is and what it does.
It's a whole amalgamation of a million games in one.
Okay.
So it's got like aspects that are like Love is in a Dangerous Space-Time. There's like proper Wii era style mini games that you play using the Joy-Cons. The game melds the main campaign together, like where it melds these aspects together in the main campaign, I should say, and it's just really weird. So you play as a pill, like a vitamin.
Okay.
And it's like a blue side and a pink side to like match the Switch Joy-Cons.
Did you both play as your gendered sides with the blue and the pink, or did you refute the socialized norms?
We did, but I've retired the blue and pink Joy-Cons because of drift. So I was the green player and Caroline was the pink player.
Fair enough.
So as you're navigating, so you go across like the bodies of a family. So there's like a baby, a dog, a mum, a dad, a brother.
Okay.
And
I like the setup. That's fun.
Each family member is like their own Metroidvania style map, although it's not Metroidvania strictly, but it's like a 2D map
that
you're exploring. This utilizes every single aspect of the Joy-Cons as well, I should say. So as player 1, I'm controlling the direction of the ship I'm literally moving the ship, and then Caroline is controlling the angle of the ship. I also have control over the shooting of the gun, but Caroline has control over the aiming of the laser gun.
Right, so it's asymmetrical. You're both doing different things.
So it's asymmetrical. On top of that, I have control over this hook shot grabbing thing, which I use the face buttons for, and then I literally move it with the sensor in the motion control to grab things and pull them. And then Caroline has to actually press a button to make the grab. So every single aspect is dual controlled. And the current thrust of the game is you're going through these corridors, blasting through like enemies and chunks in the walls like that looks like cheese that you kind of blast through. There are like these chords that go either blue or pink, and if it's a blue chord, it means the ship has to be angled blue first, and you can break the chord by forcing the blue part of the ship through. Likewise, pink, you have to force the pink part of the ship through, and you're kind of just going through these levels, kind of getting to the vital organs of each of these family members. And once you reach an organ, you do a mini game. Now there's like maybe 4 or 5 mini games, and they range in how good they are. One of them is literally like the Wii Fit game. I don't know if you can remember it, MBZ. It's like you step on the balance board, you step off it, and you're doing it in rhythm, and then you clap, and then it's like a
step machine.
So one of them's literally Step Machine, where me as player 1, I'm pressing a button to clap, I'm moving up and moving down, and then Caroline's like rotating it in time, and it's just really dull stuff, to be honest. But likewise, one of the mini games, which was more fun, although it made the game crash a couple of times, was like the air hockey in Wii Play. So I'm literally moving the paddle to hit the puck, and then Caroline has the ability to angle, so it is mirroring some of the abilities we have in the world.
Right.
Likewise, there is a game where Caroline, so I move along the bottom with like this grabbing claw that reaches to the top of the screen, and Caroline controls the grabbing claw going up and down the screen by literally holding the IR sensor with one hand, and then moving her other hand close to the sensor and far from the sensor in order to stretch the grabbing claw up the screen. So like it's literally using every part of the Wii. That's literally what this game feels like. It's like a Wii game. That's why I say Wii.
It's a Freudian slip, but like kind of appropriate, right?
Very appropriate. So like, you're doing this, and then one of the mini games which I actually really enjoyed was it's like Kurin on the GBA. So I have the ability to move the shape through the world, and then Caroline has to angle it, and it's like a time trial where you have to go as quickly as possible, and there's stuff like there's like these rotating pads that make your thing move the wrong way at the wrong time. And there's also another mini game where it's like like these wire cables that you have to move a wire loop around without touching it, otherwise it buzzes.
Oh, like not Operation, but like similar to Operation.
Yeah, similar to Operation. So I have the ability to move, but Caroline has the ability to angle. So we're kind of working our way, and it's this cooperative thing. So some of the mini games are more fun than others, but the main thrust of the game, the going through the levels, gets kind of slow. The voice acting's fine. The story's a bit weird. The ending's quite cool and weird and zany, and I enjoyed that more than I thought I would. But then the actual what you're doing, and like Caroline wasn't having a great time with this game. She just thought it was a bit dull, and it's always harder playing a co-op game with someone who's not enjoying themselves.
No, yeah, for sure.
So it definitely made me not find it quite as fun, and it just kind of fell flat a bit. I will say the soundtrack is killer. It's Splatoon levels of Japanese quality pop rock in there that we really enjoyed the whole time, which is very unexpected for this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a 4 to 5 hour game, and there's much better co-op experiences that we've had. Yeah.
Right. Like, it seems, especially on Switch and stuff that you guys have played before, especially stuff like Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time, which I know you love, Overcooked, of course. Like, there's loads of really good co-op stuff already available that seems just better than what this is.
Yeah. I see what they're going for. There's some cool stuff in there. I like the quirkiness of utilizing all the Switch abilities, I guess.
Yeah. The features.
And yeah, because I've seen some really like strange reviews, like saying this is like 9 out of 10, and others are more like 6 and 7 out of 10.
Oh,
so
interesting.
There's a real Nintendo
I
World
wonder
Report.
if in single player it's less frustrating or something like that.
But
maybe.
then you're kind of, in my view, you're kind of losing the point a bit.
Right,
I guess.
exactly.
I don't know. And I don't know how it was Don Koopman, I think, at NWR. I don't know whether he played co-op or single player, but yeah, he gave it like a 9 out of 10. So I just wasn't feeling it. There's some good stuff in there, but didn't stick the landing for me. And yeah, we'll try some other co-op game another time.
Yeah, no, because that came in and I was like, oh, this seems like a good thing for you guys to play because co-op on Switch. And
I will say it's very strange it coming out at the same time as this coronavirus, because that genuinely does link like to the plot in a
really
bit. I won't kind of spoil it at the end, but it's like, whoa, okay, the timing of this could not be more spot on.
That's really fucking weird. Okay,
yeah.
Well, I mean, I know this game will have been in development way before that was even a concern, but yeah, crazy, cool.
Anyway, I've been playing a lot.
Any other secret Game Pass games that you've been playing?
Not this time. I've downloaded Lonely Mountains Downhill. I wanted to give that
nice.
a go.
Yeah, the game's great.
Then, I want to play a million things that we can talk about off mic.
Slay the Spire, my friend.
Slay the Spire, all the Halos. Hellblade. Want to play that? So
yeah, I think I might play Hellblade soon as well. It'd be cool. We should both just play that at the same time. Then we can talk about it.
Let's do that. Yeah, it's only like a 6-7 hour game in theory. So
yeah. For sure.
Ninja Theory, is that who makes it?
Yes, it is.
Good reference there. Anyway,
there we go.
MVZ.
Yes.
What have you been playing?
Oh, too many things, my friend. Let me see. So let's talk about another Way Forward game, just to bounce off of that one real quick. Last year I got a code for the Mighty Switch Force Collection on Switch, which, interestingly enough, Mighty Switch Force, you would think, oh, they named it after the Switch. No, this is a series that had notoriety on 3DS. I think it was Zach Miller on NWR is a huge fan of this series, and back in the day when I was listening to a bunch of their podcasts, there wasn't that much on the 3DS eShop. Mighty Switch Force was one of the first major 3DS eShop games that kind of hit big and was a really cool thing. And fundamentally, I really like it. The basic idea is a 2D platformer, and each stage you have to collect these girls who have escaped from prison. So it's like, you're this policewoman and you're running around. There are 2 versions of the game that have been put on this collection. One of them is sprite based, that is based on the 3DS version, just up-resed. The other one is like an HD version, but they're the same game, but they're treated as 2 separate entries on the HD collection, but they're basically the same game. So, choose whichever one you like the look of, I guess. And I chose the sprite one because I booted them both up and I took screenshots of the opening cutscene of both. And I don't know, the HD version, it just didn't really vibe with me, the art style of it. I really like the chunky pixels, so I went with the kind of classic look to it. And you jump around these levels, and you have a couple of abilities. One of them is your gun, which you can kill enemies with. The other one is your helmet has a light in it, and if you press the A button, it will switch. And what that means is this is kind of a game built around the entire idea from Mario Galaxy, where you switch blocks. So how it's like ding, 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 switch, that type of mechanic. Only most of the time you have control over when it switches.
I think that first came into 3D Land, actually.
No, that was Galaxy when they did that for the first time. When it's blinking, when it's blinking blocks and then it switches between the blinking blocks. That's definitely a Galaxy mechanic. So that's basically the idea of this game, is you run across these levels. There's like 20 levels total, and there's 5 bonus ones at the end. And I actually really enjoy the game, so I went through and did the bonus levels afterwards, except for one type of level, which you don't have control over. So it's more similar to Mario Galaxy in that your hat will blink 3 times, and then it will change. And you not having control over the switching really messed me up a lot and made it so that some of the timing was really awkward, and it wasn't as much fun as just the main levels where you're doing it yourself. And there's some really clever things they do in terms of you manipulate objects. So there are bombs that walk around, and you can't break these blocks. The bombs have to break them. So there are certain blocks you fall into, which when you turn them on, it will shoot you. So you enter the block space, you turn it on, it puts you into a little hole, and then it like shoots you off into the distance, up high or across the screen or whatever. And there's multiple timing-based challenges where you have to press A to get the bomb into a thing, and then tap it again to open a new one and close it in and shoot it across. So you do like multiples of these in a row to get the bomb where it needs to be to blow up the thing, find the prisoner who's escaped, and collect them. And there's 5 prisoners in every level, and you collect them all, and you finish the level. And it's kind of timing based as well. Each level has a par time, so it's like beat it in under 1 minute 20. And I guess you'd probably get something for doing that. Back in the day, I remember Zach Miller being a huge fan of this and like going crazy about doing multiple routes of it, and just trying to beat high scores. And I'm not really here for that, but I had a good time just kind of blasting through, playing all the levels. It feels good, looks really nice.
How's the double jump?
There is no double jump.
No
I would have added to my Twitter thread of double jumps had it had one. It didn't, unfortunately, so it does not qualify. But I would recommend that collection because the second game's on there as well. And then there's another one called Mighty Switch Force Academy, which is like this really zoomed out map that is kind of the same mechanics. I'll probably play through those at some point. They're relatively short. I think I spent 3 hours-ish with the first one. And yeah, it was enjoyable enough to where I actually wanted to go and do the bonus levels even after I rolled credits. So I guess that's pretty high praise, considering I don't tend to do that usually. Next, I played a game that I got sent a review code for end of last year.
Do we want to do the 2-minute timers?
Sure, you can do a 2-minute timer
it.
for this one, essentially. So this game is called Awesome P, and it's a Switch game that came out, I think, 2 years ago. It was kind of close to the launch of Switch. You play as this little P, he's green, and you jump around levels. It has a double jump. This is one of the double jumps I rated on Twitter. I gave it about a 4 out of 10, I think. It's a really bad double jump. And also, like, this game is not that interesting. It's a 2D platformer. There's very much I
saw a bit of gameplay. It looks kind of flat.
Yeah, it is very flat. There's a kind of a formula to the types of levels, and they kind of just repeat those level types. Some of them, you can't really tell the difference between them. There's not really any pacing to it in terms of difficulty. They all feels like a flat difficulty, really. It has this Game Boy aesthetic to it, which is like this really sickly green.
Yeah.
And like, there's actually filters.
Do people like a Game Boy aesthetic? Is that a thing that people...
Bally, our logo is a Game Boy aesthetic, so you better bloody like a Game Boy aesthetic.
I mean in the game, but I got...
Yeah, no. I do like a Game Boy aesthetic when it's done well. I don't think it's particularly done well here because for the most part it's just a filter that's just put over the screen. And I played the entire game with that filter without really realizing it. And it has a lot of like janky hitbox stuff. It's one of those games that made me realize the idea of coyote time. Do you know what coyote time is?
I've forgotten now.
It's a phrase that I think the Celeste developers came up with it, but it's this idea that developers will build into a game, platformers especially, if the player is jumping off a ledge and they're like already off the ledge as they jump, they allow them to still jump, right? Like they give that extra little window. This game does not have that at all. Like I think this is the thing that sets platformers apart for me. Games that do this and games that don't. Because you will press the A button, you're like, I swore I fucking jumped there. But it will be because you're used to other games where it gives you coyote time, where it actually lets you do that input even if you are slightly off the edge of the platform. And this game doesn't do that, which makes it feel bad, right? It just makes the jumping feel not as tight as it should be. It
feels sticky.
Yeah, it does. It feels a bit awkward and not that fun. Like, you collect coins, they don't really serve any purpose. Like, you collect gems as well. They also, like, it seems that there's probably some unlockables if you 100% it.
2 minutes.
Anyway, I wasn't really that interested in doing the collectibles.
I mean, I was part of that 2 minutes. So
yeah, I know. You know what I mean. But like, I think you get the idea. This game is pretty unremarkable. It's one of those games that in 5 years I'll forget I ever played it. It took me maybe an hour and a half to finish.
Hey, it's another game you've beaten. You can add to your number.
It is.
It's a statistic.
Let's talk about another game that I've beaten, which is by its nature short because it's called Minit. Minit is a game that came out 2 years ago now, maybe. And the base premise of it is that you have 60 seconds and then you die. And so it's kind of a Zelda-style overworld where you're this little character, it's in black and white, you find a sword on a beach, and you then proceed to explore the world, talk to NPCs, and find ways to progress within the 1 minute. So it may be that a thing you have to do is go to a lighthouse. There's an NPC who talks really, really slowly. And so most of your time for that 1 minute run is taken up waiting to see what he says, which is a funny joke because, like, you know, you have this very limited time and, like, you need to get stuff done. And they put this NPC in very early on in the game where it's like, oh, I need to do this. And, you know, you'll get permanent items. So if you collect a shovel, you'll keep that permanently. If you collect a camera, that will stay permanently at your home. So it's kind of Majora's Mask-esque, I guess, in that sense.
And how many runs did it take you to beat?
It's not really runs because the way it works is that you will unlock new home bases, so you won't always be starting from the same point.
So they could have done like you start the same home base and you just teleport somewhere, but instead they got unique home bases. They
kind of do that later in the game where you can your home base gets a basement that lets you travel between all the bases essentially. But the first one you unlock is your caravan, and well, that's the one you start with. The first one you unlock is in the desert, and if you got to the desert, you wouldn't be able to in 1 minute get from the caravan all the way to the desert to explore the whole desert to find what you need. So they give you basically a checkpoint essentially, but it just gives you a different place to restart from. And if you want to restart back at your caravan, you just need to walk back in it and it will change that to your beginning point of the next run. And I really liked it. I think, you know, it took me like 90 minutes to finish. I did it in one sitting. It's a really good just sit down and play it all the way through game. And to some degree, I'm kind of like, well, did I really need this mechanic? But I think it does offer a kind of... It never felt like I was rushed. It never felt like I needed to worry about the time. Because you always feel like these little micro goals are within your reach, and I think it breaks it down nicely in that way, right? Like,
does it make you realize that like actual real life time while you're playing games is actually going quite slowly?
Yeah, potentially, right? Because a minute is actually a good amount of, especially when you're moving a video game character from place to place. I think in our mind we're like, it takes
15 minutes to get across Breath of the Wild. It's like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feels... Breath of the Wild probably
does
take
that
long.
Example,
it's a bad example. But say Twilight Princess's Hyrule Field, you're like, it's going to take me 10 minutes to get to Kakariko Village. In reality, it's probably about 2 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
But our brains don't perceive it that way. And so when you have it kind of blatantly in your face, you're like, oh, I actually do have more time than I thought I did. And I think some of the late game stuff, there's a little bit of confusion that I had in terms of what I needed to do to progress and stuff. There's one moment kind of after the first section of the game, like you think you have discovered and explored everything you need to, and there's a specific thing you need to do. And I figured that out on my own, but like by the end of the game, there were a couple of moments where I was like, oh, I need to look this up maybe because it was a little bit too many times just doing the same thing, bashing my head against the wall, right?
Right.
But overall, very satisfying, very cute art style. I think it has some nice animation and some really cool... It has, funnily enough, a really, like by the end of it, a very anti-capitalist message, which I'm always here for.
Okay, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, no, strangely like very pro-worker, anti-corporation, which is cool. And I didn't really expect that from the game because it's not really probably a story to write home about, but you know, there's things that happen in the later... part of it that is pretty. I got a kick out of. So, what is next? I also played Rhythm Thief. A game that I've been meaning to play for a long time. You played it back when, closer to when
what
the Humble Bundle
came
came
Humble
out.
Bundle on 3DS, which was random.
And Nintendo would never do that today on the Switch. They just wouldn't. That felt like a desperation move to me in terms of no one's buying games on here. We need to get the indie games out to people. Now it's like you're just drowning in indie games and people buy them a dime a dozen. So for me, Rhythm Thief is very interesting because it's a game of 2 days and it's a game of two halves. The first day I played it, I was in love. I was like, this is amazing. I love the animated cutscenes. I love how there's so much variety in the types of rhythm games you're doing. It is such a fucking blatant rip-off of Professor Layton. It's not even funny. And I think it's interesting because you came to this game having never played a Layton.
Right.
And so you didn't really bring that up when you talked about it. I would be interested when you play a Layton game, you'll be like, this is like Rhythm Thief, except you've experienced it backwards.
Rhythm Thief, Capcom?
No, it's Sega.
Sega, of course, right.
Yeah. And it's down to the fact that you are tapping randomly on the screen to find coins that you then use for a purpose. In Layton, the coins are actually worth a shit because you use them to give you hints. They're hint coins. Whereas in this game, you use the coins to buy some of the animated cutscenes you've already seen in the story. I don't know. Like, a lot of the collectibles in this game feel a little underbaked and just not worth much. There's a certain collectible which is a bunch of notes where you have to collect them all in a row in order to get a part of a sheet of paper that then will unlock a thing at the end of the game. Anyway, my OCD was such that, and I listened to RFN talk about this recently because they did a retroactive on it, and John Lindemann was like, I'm a master tapper, like just tap the screen like a nutso person. That is me as well. I am 100% the person who gets to a new screen and is like tap 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 just every fucking corner possible, even though I know there is no point in these coins. I'm not going to spend them. I just finished the game. I didn't spend them once. I have over 1,000 of them, and like I don't really understand. This is part of my lizard brain that's like very satisfying to just find something,
You're perfect for the mobile game market.
I know. I'm looking at some
want to hear
clickers.
That cha-ching.
I just exactly. It's guaranteed. Just adrenaline or whatever you call it. What's the chemical?
More spin of the wheel.
Yeah, what's the chemical called? I can't remember. The one that
endorphins.
Yeah, no. There's a specific one. I can't think of it. My brain's not working. That, like, you know what I mean. Is the one that gets people to buy loot boxes and blah blah blah. So that for me was a real weird thing because I just engaged with a system that was completely unnecessary, but I still enjoyed doing it because you get a little satisfaction of finding a little fucking treasure box. Like, woohoo, I got a present, I can open it now. And like there's a good amount of charm to Rhythm Thief. I think like the characters are not amazingly written, but they have this funny thing where it's set in France, it's set in Paris, right? And there's a really cool overworld map. It's like a really cozy vibe to the overworld.
Yeah, it's a cool take on Paris.
And everything is in the wrong place, obviously, but it has this really nice like coziness, and I liked walking around the map and like visiting the places. But the main characters have like voices from all over the shop. Your main character has an American accent. The main girl has an English one. There's a real, oh, hello, I'm a British person type of accent going on with one of the child of the detective has a real British accent and the detective has like a bad French accent.
Dopamine you're thinking of, I think.
Dopamine, yes, dopamine. Thank you.
Gotta get it. Every day.
So the child has the British accent, the father has the French accent, and the weird thing, here's a weird thing that I noticed today. The game, some of the text that is written as if they have a French accent when they don't. So like, that character, the daughter of the detective, she says like papa or alors or non. And when the dialogue gets spoken by the voice actor, it's a completely different line, or that like she says father instead of papa. And I wonder if they wrote the script and then they got into the recording booth and they're like, actually, we want to go in this direction with it. We don't want to give them all fake French accents. We want to make this person a British person. This is an American person. And they just changed their mind, essentially, after the script had been written. So there are multiple instances where the script says something that is totally different to what the voice-acted character actually says. And they never changed it in the script itself, which is just a little weird. But I think like the core of it is the rhythm games, right? And like sometimes you'll have mini games where you'll have to tap in sequence or you'll have to unlock a door by knowing the pattern. One of them today that was like a bunch of song sheets that creates an entire piece, and you have to listen to each sequence and be like,
yeah.
that goes in that order. So they do vary it up. And I think the reason this game hit so much harder the first day of playing it was it was all fresh and new, and I'd never seen the minigames before, and so they were all different, and all the little exploration, and the 3D was pretty nice, especially with the cutscenes. I was like, oh, this is really cool, going different places, meeting different characters. And then day 2 is like, oh, it's kind of the same. So like I played 3.5 hours, and then I had like another 2 hours to finish it off. And it gets to a point where some of those mini games are really frustrating and they don't work well. They don't have a good... Like, the thing you were talking about is how much better Rhythm Heaven is in terms of a rhythm game.
Right.
And I totally see that because...
Feels more like the button hitting is... The timing is better.
You don't feel like you're being robbed, whereas constantly ironic Rhythm Thief, I felt robbed of my... of my rhythms.
Robbed of your rhythm.
Yeah, because there's a one mini game especially. I was really good at the ones where you're running over the roof and you press A and B to avoid,
they were my
avoid
favorites,
the cops.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, those were really good ones. There's one sequence in particular where you're escaping from, I think it's the theater, and you're jumping on lamps. And for whatever reason, the timing, I couldn't get it at all. It was just completely off. I died like 6 times in a row straight up. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm in rhythm. I've been in rhythm for a lot of this game. What is happening here?
Sometimes the visual representation just isn't strong or clear enough, I guess. Especially in comparison to like a Rhythm Paradise, where it's like almost the entire emphasis of the visuals.
Yeah, totally. And so that just messed me up to no end. And there were multiple ones by the end of the game that were like, oh, this is a gauntlet of like really fucking hard stuff going on. And I wasn't...
speeds up and stuff. It's like...
Yeah, I wasn't enjoying, especially like the paraglider one is really bad.
Yeah.
Especially because I thought you had to double tap to kill the flying guys that coming at you, but you only have to tap it once, and so that was messing me up, and I didn't realize it, because a lot of the times the game doesn't explain itself. Like, it gives you rudimentary instructions, but doesn't let you practice or actually understand what you have to do in most sense. Like some are more explanatory, but like the violin one, the first time I saw that I was like, the fuck am I supposed to do here? Like, it just comes towards you like a Guitar Hero track and there are arrows pointing, and I'm like, I don't understand this at all. And so like you have to fail almost before you can succeed in most cases, just because it's not very clear what the end goal is, or like what you have to do to get past that particular minigame. So yeah, and I think it's a game that definitely in some senses was like given too much budget, but in some senses not given enough, because I would have loved a game that maybe was a little bit tighter in terms of its package, but also had a bit more variety to it. And I think it has a good amount of variety, don't get me wrong. I think there's loads of different rhythm minigames. Some of them I think they lean on a bit too much though. And some, especially the touchscreen ones, are definitely the weakest of the bunch. Whenever I'm using buttons, I felt much better about the game. But the touchscreen stuff, especially the final dance you do, where it's like up, down, up, left, and just quickly, like having to move the stylus to the left or to the right in the speed in which the game wants you to, often is just not fast enough compared to like a quick button press. So yeah, it's a game that I think I'm walking away from a bit more negative on than I probably should be, because I really did enjoy the first kind of session with it, and I thought it was really fun and charming and unique. As much as it rips Leighton off to hell, it definitely nails a lot of that stuff, right? Like it has a great soundtrack that is not the soundtrack that you listen to when you're playing the rhythm game. Like, the rhythm games almost have a worse musical score than the soundtrack that just plays in the background when you're wandering around the areas. So yeah, in that sense, that's good stuff. But yeah, I feel a bit weird about it. I like it a lot, but also it did frustrate me. So hey, if you had it from a Humble Bundle, it's worth playing. It took me 6 hours, I think, total. So it's pretty short. And yeah, gives you a bit of a Leighton-esque thing, which also very weird to play a 3DS game that is so touchscreen focused. And I had the 3D on most of the time, but like I felt at moments turning it off was appropriate, just because my eyes were constantly on the bottom screen. And so in your peripheral vision, if the 3D is on the top screen but you're mostly looking at the bottom screen, that's really weird, and it messed with me a bit. So yeah,
nice.
I liked it. I think overall, if we're gonna kind of come out neutral, I'm not in love. I didn't hate it.
Gotta get to Rhythm Heaven though.
Yes, I know, and I'm hoping that Switch will bring us a new Rhythm Heaven, if not a port.
Yeah, they really should. It's a sort of B tier, C tier franchise you could imagine they could announce in an upcoming direct potentially.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Week. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Who knows? And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is Bloodroots. Bloodroots is a game that will be out by the time this show goes up. Currently, it is not. And I got a code for this on Switch. And it is a game that I wasn't that interested in because it came up in an Indies Direct, maybe. And from what they showed, it didn't feel like my type of thing. Like, it looked a bit janky. It looked a bit kind of weird. And I actually really like Bloodroots, and I'm very surprised by that because this game leans into the type of Hotline Miami or Ape Out style gameplay, but in a really fresh way. It's isometric, and you are this kind of Canadian wolf head guy. He's got like a wolf pelt over him, like got a big beard, like looks very stereotypical Canadian. And you go through these levels where there are a bunch of different enemies, and most of the things in the environment you can pick up and use as a weapon. This ranges from a gun to a knife to a chair to a table to a box.
I'm looking at an axe here in this game.
Yeah, to an axe, to a haystack that you can set on fire and then throw at a guy, to a bow and arrow, to a fish that you can put on someone's head and they explode, to a carrot, to a cabbage. Like, everything in the environment is interactable, and one of the fun things is when you clear an area, each weapon has a custom like animation that does this mini like cutscene thing to end off as you've finished the final enemy. And so you always have this incentive to kill the final enemy with a different weapon so that you see a different kind of almost Mortal Kombat-esque finisher, right? So I think that's really, really cool, and it's just very much, it's the type of game that I just got locked into, and I'm maybe halfway through. I'm in Act 3, and I think there's probably maybe 4 acts total, just at the start of Act 3. And there's a good amount of variety in terms of the environments that you traverse through. Lots of cool, interesting placement of enemies and setup, and oftentimes you'll really have to think about it. It's a game where you can definitely go in guns blazing, like a Hotline Miami or an Ape Out, but it also rewards patience and it rewards strategy. And you will just die a bunch because you die in one hit. So going through and like figuring out, okay, I need this sequence of guys to die first, they'll go after this.
What's the checkpointing like?
It's area by area. So like,
okay,
you could take, it's like Katana Zero. It's like similar to Ape Out in terms of the length of a sequence before it saves it. One of the things that I found a little annoying is the platforming's not great in terms of, as an isometric view, some of the platforms are clearly drawn in 2D, but have a 3D perspective to them. And so landing, there's no shadow. Your character, I noticed this, I was like, this is why I'm having trouble. Your character doesn't have a shadow underneath him, so landing can be tricky. And if you die to like falling off the level after you've beaten a sequence but haven't got to the next part yet, you'll restart. And that happened to me once, and I was like, oh, I beat everybody, and then I accidentally fell off the side, and now I have to, even though I killed everybody, it doesn't checkpoint right after you've killed people, it checkpoints when you enter the next section. So that was just a little bit of an annoyance. Another thing I want to point out, and they may fix this by launch, but I have run into some wicked slowdown, in the sense that got really, really exacerbated.
You're playing on Switch? I
am playing on Switch, yes. So,
is it cross-platform?
Yeah, it's on PS4. It will be on Steam as well, and I imagine those versions will run better. I don't know how much better. This game runs at 30 on Switch, and you can tell it is a little sluggish from time to time, but there was one area in particular which has a really terrible mechanic that is about, like, you use this firecracker weapon, and if you press attack at the same time as you jump, you do kind of like a boost with it. And this is this entire side-scrolling 2D section where it's like razor blades and spikes on the wall, and you have to avoid them all, kind of DK barrel style almost, going across, except it feels like garbage. The animation is terrible, and I died on it multiple times. Every time I died, the frame rate got worse and worse and worse, like some kind of memory bug where it was just like bleeding through to the point where I couldn't even control the character properly. And I was like, this is really bad. This is unfucking playable bad. I thankfully was able to reset it, and get back to it, but that sequence was just really garbage. And they actually have a setting like Celeste. They kind of have an assist mode, which is invincibility, so you can just turn on invincibility for that section and just get through it, which is what I did. I was just like, I don't care, this is bad, it's bad game design, it looks bad, it doesn't control well, so I just invincibility'd my way through it because it was terrible. So I'm glad that they have that mode in there. Still doesn't really excuse the fact that the frame rate is awful, and there is definitely a memory leak happening in that section. And I wonder if, because I'm leaving it suspended on Switch, like certain games can get that thing happen to them where memory leaks occur if they're suspended and not shut down properly. So again, I'm talking about this game before launch, so we don't currently know what its state will be when it comes out and if they do a day one patch or not. But that's just my warning to you people with the Switch version in particular. Outside of that, though, I think it's pretty damn fun. Like, I'm having a great time with it, and especially some of the boss fights. I did one last night that was a roller coaster of just like, man, this is really difficult, but I know I can do it, and I know I can get past it, and I did manage to finish it. So, high difficulty curve, high learning curve, but so much goofiness and fun as well. And just real variety. I keep thinking I'm going to get bored at some point, but there's constant introduction of new weapons to just keep things fresh, and new environments. Like, there's one environment that's a desert that's a little bit too bright as well, that makes it hard to see some of the enemies. So, like, I think from my perspective, what I'm saying about this game is, like, as a gameplay design, and as a just experience, like, in terms of just pure and problems, and it depends on when it comes out, how much they fix those, and kind of what it comes down to. But currently, I'm about halfway through. I would give it that is going to wrap up our fucking breakfast, lunch, and dinner of video games. Just a very, very wholesome meal we've had. So we will be back after this break with some more of things that you've sent us in the emails. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. It is the second segment. It is the email segment. We have a few emails sent in, but we are in need of more. It has come to that point yet again. So please send your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com, or send in a message, an email into our Discord server. You can find a link to that server in the podcast description or through our Twitter account @TNL Podcast. It's a good community. Come say hi. It's a nice place to be.
We don't bite. We're very nice people.
Not
clearly.
normally.
We don't. Yeah, always.
So our first email is from Scott, who's from San Diego, California. Hi, MBZ and Bally. Long-time listener, first time writing in. I started following MZ way back when he was drunkenly narrating Gen 4 Wi-Fi battles on YouTube. That was some time ago. Mm-hmm. I've loved listening to both of you over the years, so I first wanted to start off with a very sincere thank you. Your podcast has kept me thoroughly entertained during plenty of commutes. I listen to a few other Nintendo-focused podcasts, but yours is my absolute favorite. I feel like I've gotten to know your gaming opinions and bits and pieces of your personal lives as well over the years. Whenever I listen to you guys, I feel like I'm sitting in a room with two friends talking about my favorite games, and that's simply incredible. Now, on to my question. Do either of you ever go back and replay games that you've already beaten before? Even with all the great new games coming out, as well as an overflowing backlog of older games, I still sometimes find myself wanting to revisit old games I've already played. I know MBZ has mentioned playing a little bit of Titanfall every now and then, but I'm more so talking about replaying story adventure games. I played Skyward Sword when it came out in 2011, and I just started it with my fiance to show her what a 3D Zelda was like before Breath of the Wild. Sometimes I crave playing a Pokemon game because I know that experience will be a good one, whereas a brand new game can be a little risky if I don't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. So do you guys ever decide to take a break from the backlog to replay an old game, or do you keep trucking through the backlog without re-experiencing a game from your past? If you do replay old games, have you ever had a time when you go to replay a game but don't enjoy or enjoy it differently than you remember? Personally, I had this happen with Majora's Mask. It instantly became my favourite after I poured an entire summer into it during high school. But when the 3DS remake of it came out, the magic just wasn't there. Thank you for taking my email, and thanks for keeping me entertained these past few years. Sincerely, Scott. P.S. Has MBZ ever been romantically involved? We've heard of Bally and Caroline's relationship and engagement, as well as friends and family such as Ali T and MBZ's sister. But I don't think we've ever heard of MBZ dating anyone.
Very good. Thank you, Scott, for writing, and thank you for the kind words at the top. Not really. I've had, let's call dalliances over the years, but never anything really long term.
Are your DMs open?
My DMs are open.
Your DMs
I'm
are
not
open.
actively searching right now, but hit me up. I don't know. I'm not on Tinder, so don't go over there. Yeah, no, not at the moment, but maybe in the future. We'll see. Cool. So this is an interesting question, because we often talk about how, we're all about the next thing. We're all about playing games that we've never played before. We're always looking for new experiences. And so it's rare that we talk about, hey, this is a game I played again. Just because I think, from my perspective, a lot of the podcasts I listen to, I like constantly hearing people's opinions on things that I haven't heard them talk about before. And to some degree, when you do a podcast like this, you get to the point where you're like, I'm playing more Smash Brothers. Smash Brothers is still good. I don't know what to say about it anymore, right? Like, there becomes a point of diminishing returns in terms of amount of opinion you can give and anything nuanced or new or interesting to say about it. And so I think that's generally why we don't do it as much on the podcast. That said, there are a few things that, I go back to now and again. Interestingly enough, in recent years, a lot of my replaying has been done through the form of video series. So when I replayed Fire Emblem 7, that was a Let's Play. When I played Ori, that was a Let's Play. I played Heavy Rain that's the first time, so that doesn't really count. There are a few LPs I did which were first times, but Super Mario Galaxy I did, which was replaying that game. And that's very different, I would say, than just replaying a game on your own, because when you're recording a video series, when you're focusing on an audience, it's more about entertainment and commentary and less about engaging with the game itself. Despite the fact that the game is obviously an important aspect, it's less about kind of the relaxing into a familiar blanket, as I think a lot of people do with video games, And I think the thing is with the video game industry is these days, more and more people are falling into the camp of, I only play one thing. I'm a Fortnite player, I'm a Call of Duty player, I'm a FIFA player, etc. And so that's kind of their hobby. It's not that they play video games, they play one video game, and it kind of revolves around that. And I think there's definitely been some games like that for me in recent years. Overwatch is obviously a huge one. I go back to Overwatch all the time. I'll play it a couple of hours every week or so, maybe. I'll miss it now and again, but I'll always hop in for a few games just because it's the type of thing I can play while having something else on in the background, and it's just very comfortable to me. And similar with, I kind of want to go back to a bunch of roguelikes, stuff like Slay the Spire and Into the Breach, now Dead Cells, are games that you can replay, or not necessarily replay, but they're games that are by design and naturally meant to be dipped in and out of, because they are, repetitive and you keep going through the same things again. But if we're talking about just kind of single player story stuff, it's rare that I do that, and I only really do it for my very favorite things and things that I like to know that I can just knock out and I don't really have to put a lot of time investment into. So the obvious ones are, I replayed Ori again earlier this year, got it on Switch. I play Mega Man 2 all the time. I've beaten Mega Man 2 like 7-8 times probably at this point, and it wasn't a game I grew up with, but it's one that I think was the early part of the podcast. I think it was maybe 2015, 2014 potentially, when I first finished that game, and it's just a game I have a lot of familiarity with, and it's really easy, and I like that it's now on Switch. It's very easy to jump into the Legacy Collection, and it has the features that I like, which is rewinding and be able to go back over things in case you mess up, which again helps with the amount of time that you're investing into the game. And yeah, it's harder with something like Skyward Sword, as Scott gives the example of, because that is just a daunting 50 hours or around that amount. That's how long it took me to beat it first time.
It's also like setting up your Wii again, or like your Wii U, etc. Like
right,
sometimes
yes.
you don't always have the suitable consoles ready to go.
Exactly, yeah. So sometimes it's about convenience, sometimes it's about length. And I would like to do more of it, but I think that it kind of depends game to game, because I think actually there is value in us going back and playing, say, Twilight Princess again and talking about it on the show, because that's not a game we've gone in depth on when we've talked about it. And I think a lot of the games from our childhood, we talk about how we played Mario Party 4 nonstop, but we haven't really had a discussion about that game in particular and in depth about it. So I think there is room to go back and explore that idea, potentially.
Yeah, we were thinking about it off mic, just a way of doing that we were hopefully going to maybe do sometime in the future. But as you say, Scott, it's just, for me, the podcast has completely dictated kind of what I play, when I play. And in terms of story, sort of adventure-driven games, I've really not replayed any almost since starting the podcast. Like, there's been the Wind Waker remake, for example, but that doesn't really count in a way because they've remade that in HD, and it was very much something I wanted to play on the Wii U at the time when there wasn't much else to play on the Wii U.
Sure,
and
yeah.
Games I go back to, as you said, MZ, it is the Apex Legends, it's Smash Brothers playing with you, like Splatoon that we were like playing.
Rocket League is one that you've dumped loads of hours into.
Yeah, dumped a ton of time into Rocket League, and all these are just kind of that pick up and play games that some people have as their one game, and
right.
I really want to replay Breath of the Wild, but then I take a step back and think, can I really justify playing Breath of the Wild in a world where I've got Witcher 3 sitting there ready to go? Like, it feels wrong in that sense.
Sure.
Like, it
yes.
feels, and this may be something I'll never get to, but it does feel like I am gradually getting on top of my backlog to the point.
Hey man, look, when you buy an Xbox and have Game Pass, that's not a thing you get to say at all. No.
Getting to the point where, yes, I've played what I want to play, and I can justify to myself, right, let's go back and play like a long Zelda game or a long, maybe not like a Pokemon game, but something else long, just like say, right, I want to replay that. And maybe I'm not there yet, and I'm still a long way off, but I think I'm getting closer, and maybe I'm just going to be perpetually forever getting closer. But it is healthier for the podcast and my gaming taste to try new things. But I appreciate it's not fair to say that's true 100% of the time. And as a result, I think I owe it to myself to replay some really great games. Like,
yeah,
and it's shorter stuff, like you said, like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, a game I really should replay, and like I actually own on Switch, and like I really need to go back and play that, and I really do
all of the bonus levels and everything, and unlock everything,
right? Exactly. And I will replay Breath of the Wild again. I know you were less hot on replaying it when we were discussing it, and I get that.
Yeah, for me, Breath of the Wild's interesting because it is one of those games that you can never recapture that first experience.
No.
Like, the magic is impossible to recreate because I go into this game knowing that if I use an ice rod on a chew, it's going to break into an ice chew jelly or whatever, and that's an amazing moment of discovery when it happens, less so the second time around. And having said that, though, like when I went to record footage for my top 100 games of all time and went back to play Breath of the Wild, I was just again blown away by how good that game feels to play, and just the atmosphere it creates is just remarkable. Like the way in which there's a moment where I was just creeping up on one of those, those shiny rabbit things in the north of Kakariko Village, when you go up to that kind of hilltop area.
Yeah.
And I'm just like creeping through the rain silently. And it's just such an incredible tone and vibe, and it is remarkable, but it is also, I think it would be a different experience going back to it again.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, the sequel is coming, right? So I feel that there is a version of Breath of the Wild that will be fresher and newer, and I'll probably enjoy more if I jump into it not having gone back to that first game.
And I feel like if I was going to replay it, I kind of have to do it now. And like now is not a good time. And maybe there never will be a good time, because like I am playing long games like Chrono Trigger, and I do want to play Witcher 3 next and that sort of thing. And yeah, but I do fundamentally think I could go off a different direction in the plateau and do something completely different and just have an absolute blast with that game. I agree, it wouldn't be anywhere near as magical as the first time, and obviously Breath of the Wild 2 is potentially around the corner, and you don't want to be worn out on that genre before such an incredible game comes out, so.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Is there anything, if you had infinite time, Bally, and you would go back to some games, what are some games that you would want to just go back and play again?
Stuff like, I'd want to play like Skyward Sword again. I would play Wind Waker again, the Zeldas, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time. I'd really want to play like Metroid Prime 1 again. Like I know I've not played 3 yet.
That's a good one actually, because it's such an early game in the era of us talking about stuff on the podcast, and I think you've developed in terms of your, the way that you discuss games since then. So.
Yeah, and I'd even admit, I bet there's large parts of that game that don't feel like they hold up in the same way as I felt they might have done when I first played it, even though me first playing it was already like a decade on, at least, well, much more than a decade on from that game coming out. What other games? Yeah, I don't know, just adventure style, like, even like the stuff I've played on PS4 very recently, like Spider-Man, God of War. I really want to go back to those, but again, those games have sequels coming out. Watching like Caroline playing Horizon makes me want to play that game again, and obviously that's going to have a sequel coming out in the near future. So it's just kind of, the sequels kind of make you more skeptical of maybe going back and burning out on a style of game, because I do feel I've more or less feel like I've felt a bit of burnout on almost every genre at different points during the podcast, and it's just about balancing what you're doing. Like I'm playing a bit of Halo right now and Forza, and both of them feel so fresh because they're completely different to anything I've really gone deep on before, and that's a really nice feeling. I'm not sure I'll share the same thoughts come Halo 5, but it's good for now, and like it's just kind of mixing up experiences and engaging with new things to talk about on the show feels like my priority right now, more so than going back as much. As I'm sure at some point we'll come up with a format that will do similar to like a game trade or a backlog club, where we can play an old game.
A third pillar, if you will.
Third pillar. We need that third pillar.
You can't be a Nintendo podcast without a third pillar.
You'll have a third pillar that lasts for a year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel for me, like it's huge RPGs. It's The Witcher. Like I would love to replay Witcher 3. But my God, that game is enormous. I'd love to play Persona 5 again. Even Persona 4, which probably took me half the time that 5 did. Those games are by nature just behemoths, and they are very difficult to kind of justify going back to. But like Persona 4 feels like an old friend. Like it is the music and the vibe and the way that game is written and performed, and all of it just makes me feel comfortable and at home. And maybe it is one of those things that you just need to let yourself do every once in a while. So even if it is like on the side and you don't have to finish it or go through the whole thing again, but it's kind of like reconnecting with it in a sense.
Is there anything you've gone back to that kind of fell a bit short?
Yeah, as he was asking. I don't know. I would say
Wind Waker felt pretty dry after Breath of the Wild. I'll definitely say that. It
so
felt quite straightforward.
I remember we were starting to do that like Let's Play of Wind Waker again, and I think we started it before Breath of the Wild came out, and then we went back. I went back to it, and I was like, I can't play this anymore. Like the way that Link moves, the buttons you have to use, it just felt so alien, which is weird because going back to Link's Awakening, in the remake, that I felt fine with that. Maybe it's been enough time, maybe because it's 2D, so it's slightly different mindset. I mean, Link's Awakening is one that I wasn't a huge fan of, and I think the remake improved it, but I still kind of have similar feelings on that. Mega Man is a game that I go back to, and I still think is very, very good. I think just older games on GameCube and stuff like that. I think the relitigation of Mario Sunshine is definitely a thing that has happened for me in recent years, despite never owning the game or really playing it at all. I remember when you first got Mario Sunshine and going over to your house and looking at it and being like, oh, this is so cool, and he flips around and he's got the flood and it's awesome and it's colourful and bright and amazing. And in the years subsequent, having learned a lot more about game design and like what's a good level and what is controls well, everything I have seen about people's modern opinions of Sunshine convinced me that game is just trash garbage. Not like, it's not a terrible game in the sense of most games, but from a Nintendo perspective, from a first-party perspective, it is absolutely not living up to the standard that they set. So that's definitely one. And I think just some games of the PS2 era, or even like the PlayStation 1, you go back and try to play Tomb Raider, the original Tomb Raider, and it controls like garbage. I always thought that a lot of these PS1 games, like Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, I always thought I was just very bad, but it turns out, no, those games are terribly designed, and actually it's less my fault and more the fault of early 3D game design that has not held up well and still doesn't really shine in this day and age. So I think that's just a realization is that era generally on Sony's platform is rougher to go back to. I think Nintendo's games are much easier. Like Ocarina and Mario 64 hold up way better than Sony's efforts from them.
Do you think the current gen... So say you compare a game like Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild to, say, your God of Wars, your Spider-Mans, your... whatever Xbox is doing, like Gears 5 or whatever. Do you agree that in 20 years' time, it's the Nintendo games that will age best for a number of reasons? And I think it stems from, primarily, I think it's gameplay and controls.
Yes,
but then
100%.
after that, I think the fact that both those games don't go for photorealism, that is going to age incredibly well.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen evidence of that, You
Right.
look at the... Wind Waker is the prime example of that game, or even Okami, right? Like both of those games from that era, they chose an art style that ages, and yet you go back to GTA 3 and you're like, woof, like even though at the time people were like, oh, this is the most realistic looking thing I've ever seen in my life. So that's the danger there, and I think as we go on, I don't know how stark the difference will be, but even now, like you go back and look at Xbox 360 and PS3 games, and they look really dated. Like Infamous 1 is a game
Especially near the launch, like it's like, wow.
Yeah, totally. Like frame rate wise and resolution wise and everything, there's a muddiness to a lot of those early HD era games that even, only a few years ago I was like, these look amazing. So I think the fact that industry keeps pushing forward in that sense, definitely visually is a big impact. But as you said, right, like I don't think that there's a better feeling platformer in 3D than Mario Odyssey. Like it is sublime in terms of its control and movement and just every responsive aspect to it, which means that, probably in 20 years, it'll still feel really good to play Mario Odyssey versus, I don't know, Horizon, which it's good, like it's a well-made game, but I think it will feel stiff and weary by the time we get, many years removed from it.
Yeah, totally.
And that's just the way that game design is different when you talk about Nintendo versus many other developers. We talk about this all the time, but the gameplay first perspective, the fact that Splatoon was a bunch of tofu blocks before it was ever, characters, tells you that like Nintendo care about the fundamental of play more than they care about like lore and world building and narrative, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a different discipline.
Yeah, like Horizon, it was said like it was a world of mechanical dinosaurs in a real world before even the story was written. The story was fit around the concept of
exactly. Yeah,
when you want to have cool dinosaurs in this world. And yeah. So anyway, yeah. Thank you very much for your email, Scott. That was some really good points, really good ones.
Yeah.
Our next email is from Capsule J, who's from Georgia in the USA. Dear Bally and MBZ, since the very beginning of the system's life, there has been a constant clamour for Virtual Console on Nintendo Switch. Lately, I've been starting to think that the lack of Virtual Console may actually be a good thing. The hunger for retro-style games has been driving people to check indie games that otherwise would have been overlooked. For example, you may have recently heard the studio that made 2D Zelda-like Blossom Tales was saved from bankruptcy by their game's exceptionally strong sales on Switch. I'm not sure Switch owners would have been so quick to give a charming little game like Blossom Tales a shot if they have already been playing A Link to the Past, especially since virtual console games tend to be cheaper than indie titles. Do you guys agree that the lack of virtual console has given Switch indies a greater chance to thrive? If virtual console comes to Switch, what do you think could be done to maintain the health of the indie market on the eShop? Thanks as always for a great podcast, Capsule J.
Great. I think this email's a little old, so I think, stuff like the Super Nintendo Online wasn't necessarily a thing when this was written in, but it's still interesting to talk about, and it's a topic that we have covered a lot, but virtual console and indies and the way that it would clash, I actually don't think it would have been a big deal. If you judge by what we currently have in the NES and the Super Nintendo kind of offering that Nintendo has given people, because ultimately everyone's favorite games, Super Metroid, Link to the Past, Mario World, Mario 3, all these big hitters are now there on Switch. They're available to people and people can play them instead of playing the new games. But I think the new games have been hitting because, a lot of these indies, a lot of these 2D style games get a lot of buzz on social media. A lot of people are talking about them. And so everyone wants to play something that is new, right? And I think the new and the freshness of those experiences has won out over a younger generation who doesn't necessarily have that greater connection to stuff like a Mario World, There will always be people who only play those games, and that's the main thing they play on their Switch. But I think from what I've heard of people, not many people have dipped into those offerings. And it's potentially because, we've seen all this before, right? We've been here. God, how many times have Nintendo sold you Super Metroid? Like, ad fucking nauseum. Versus, where's the N64 games, like, ones that are much harder to get? Obviously, you can't have something like GoldenEye Perfect Dark unless you do some deals with licensing and obviously with Rare. And the thing is, GameCube right now is the nostalgia piece. People who grew up with GameCube are of an age with, income to spend on things and to re-examine the nostalgia that they had for that era. Stuff like Mario Sunshine and Wind Waker are at their peak right now in terms of, young people nostalgia, who want to go back to them. So that is such an obvious core to me that Nintendo is just ignoring.
Do you think, though, you said that NES and SNES games haven't disrupted the current flow, and you said basically it's because those games have been available in numerous other places, whether it's Wii U or the SNES Classic.
Was the only thing Nintendo gives us, right? Like every time it's a virtual console, it's go, okay, we're going to start with NES and Super Nintendo, and then maybe we'll give you a bit of something else, but it's always Nintendo and Super Nintendo. That's the big boys.
But if it was Game Boy Advance and GameCube, for example, and some N64, do you not think that has the potential to really disrupt the indie output? Because there'd be a lot more people clamoring for it than currently NES and SNES games, which seem to have just completely gone under the radar because they are so dime a dozen in a way.
Not necessarily. I think it's because ultimately a lot of people talk about virtual console are like, oh, all these old games and stuff like that. But if you think about yourself and you think about a lot of other people generally, people have nostalgia for a couple of games, right? Someone may grow up playing, I don't know, Four Swords Adventures, right? And they have great memories with friends of playing Four Swords Adventures. They love that game. They played it a ton. Four Swords Adventures comes out. They play that a bunch. They remember the nostalgia. They had a great time. But there's not any other GameCube game or even GBA game that matters to them, right? And so out comes, I don't know, Eternal Darkness, or out comes Prince of Persia, some, older game, Soul Calibur 2. And they don't care about those because they didn't grow up with them. Those hit other people. There are other people for who that's a touchstone game who they go back to. We're very weird in that we play a lot of shit and we go back to things constantly. Your average consumer doesn't do that. Your average consumer will have nostalgia for a couple of things. They'll play that couple of things, but mostly I think they will be interested in newer stuff because, again, most people are playing those new games and that's what everyone's talking about. So I think it is a little bit of a misnomer that the market will turn away from independent and Nintendo first party stuff that is coming out on Switch because of, nostalgia rules all, which I don't think it does. I think there's a limited amount of time that people have to go back to things they love versus, other things. So it's definitely, it's one of those things where you don't think at this point there's any chance Nintendo are going to do a virtual console style thing. Like, it's completely out of the question because
it's like I mean, mentioned this before, but it feels like the tectonic plates have to shift before Nintendo go back to that well in a way. So
Right,
I mean,
yes.
like, say Game Pass or PS5 or something shifts the dynamic where Switch becomes the go-to for indies to say like Microsoft lob an absolute ton of money at indies, like come on Game Pass, don't go to Nintendo, come to us and we'll give you all this money to come on Game Pass. And then a good chunk of the strongest indies say, you know what, yeah, let's go for Game Pass. They're launching with Series X, let's see what this is about. And then all of a sudden it dries up a bit for Nintendo and the Switch. I think at that point Nintendo might be like, well, we've got this card up our sleeve. And
right, it's like an emergency pull the lever.
It's a bit like an emergency. It kind of felt in many ways a bit like an emergency during the Wii U era with how like thorough.
Yeah, but like even then they were like, here's GBA games, here's 10, we're never releasing anymore. Here's N64, there's 5, we're never doing anymore. Like it was like, here's Wii games, there's like Metro Prime Trilogy, and then they did like 10 more and they were done.
It wasn't very thorough.
No.
And
they released the weirdest games. Like they released Pandora's Tower, but they don't put the last story. Like it's very strange stuff.
But I mean, maybe it just wasn't thorough because there were only 13 million Wii U's out there and there just wasn't a large number of people buying lots of Wii U Virtual Console games in comparison to, say, the Wii. Although I think the stats on the Wii for Virtual Console games isn't that great either. But like you would imagine this with Switch, it would be way better.
No, and I think that is the major point, right? When we talk about financials with Nintendo, they, by all accounts, with the Switch install base, with the number of people who are paying a subscription yearly, is now making them way more money than your average consumer would spend on Virtual Console games in a year. You think about, like, it is only 20 quid-ish for a year of Nintendo Switch Online. You know, Joe Bloggs has bought Mario World and Super Metroid, and that's all he's going to buy for his Wii, for the Virtual Console. Because those are the games he grew up playing. And that cost him, what, 15 quid total? And that's all he's going to pay. Now Joe Bloggs is paying 20 quid a year to Nintendo. So over the course of 5 years, they are making extremely, like, way more money than they would have been in their previous model. And I think it's because, you know, obviously they're forcing people to, if they want to play online, which is kind of just taking, you know, tips from their competitors, but it also offers people, hey, here's kind of like a bunch of games, and most of them are the ones you know, so, you know, these are the ones you probably would have bought anyway, and here they are, and now we're just going to put out some random shit, like Poppin' Twinbee, which I played the other day, and try like a, you know, it's a shooter that is very weird, and not the type of thing that I would have bought of my own volition, but it's there, so I'll give it a go, you know, definitely, it's changed the way, and I imagine there used to be these like these charts that Daniel Ahmad, he's the guy on Twitter, Zoog EX, he's very good like with financials and stuff, and he showed a chart of like the revenue made by Sony and Microsoft in terms of their online subscription business versus Nintendo, and like they fucking dwarfed Nintendo just because Xbox Live PS Plus accounts for such a huge amount of their profit versus Nintendo, where they didn't have that business built in, and so they were only making sales through digital purchases, which at some point during the Wii U era they only just started.
Oh, so that's comparing just everything bought online, whether that's online passes or games. That makes sense.
I believe, yeah. So now that Nintendo has that extra revenue stream, you know, they're not going to be touching Microsoft and Sony currently because the pricing model is different for them, but they're still going to be making way more money than they would have done from a Virtual Console, just by sheer economics of it. Like, it's force of people and people owning a Switch. You know, if you have a Switch and you're playing Splatoon and Smash Brothers and Animal Crossing, you have to have online, right? They force you to. So that's the way it's working.
And to Nintendo's credit, they've done enough strong online games between Mario Kart, Splatoon, and Smash Brothers where, yes, it is 20 quid a year and maybe it was a free experience before, but, you know, there's the quality online games and more or less the quality online experiences, although they are a bit janky in parts, that like are worth playing, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. So, yeah, I just don't think it makes sense, especially like you just look at the rest of the industry and the models and the idea that streaming is going to become such a a factor in the new generation. Add to that like Microsoft and Sony's potential backwards compatibility across everything. Like people not having to rebuy games again. Nintendo like the biggest culprit of rebuying games again. So I think that they definitely don't want to be left behind. Naturally they will be, because they're Nintendo and they're always like at least 10 years behind on any given issue that relates to something that isn't game design. But like that's part of the reason we like Nintendo is their stupidity. Like there is a certain whimsy
and their brilliance.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't have one without the other. Like,
no, you can't.
If Nintendo suddenly sorted out, they're like, right, we've got Nintendo Pass and it's going to have all these games. It's going to be all of a sudden like Breath of the Wild becomes half the scope and less ambitious or something. I think there is method to the madness in that way.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe they just need to go outside and know. Like, I remember a story going around about like how people at Nintendo didn't know what PSN was or didn't know how Xbox Live worked, and it's like, well, I'm not surprised really. Like, given what they were doing back in those days. I
think there is so much about Nintendo that the industry just has no idea about, and that like when you hear about stories about crunch and this, like. These are all very much Western developers that we're hearing about, and it's because people are more prepared to speak English and come forward to journalists to talk about it.
Also, we just don't have access to Japan in the same way because of the language barrier.
And it's beyond language barrier now. It's like cultural norms in Japan about being loyal to the company. You would never speak to the press. That's letting down your company, this sort of thing. So, like,
sure.
I think there's a whole lot to be discovered about Nintendo just generally in the next 20 years about like their practices and stuff, because
I wonder when Reggie like has NDAs expire, if he does at all, if there's like a tell-all book from Reggie at some point.
I'm skeptical how much Reggie knows about the inner workings of how some of these games are made, honestly.
Well, how some of the games are made potentially, but like the business factors, right? Like, and how he communicated with, Iwata and everyone at the business level, the corporate level. And he's talked about some of that stuff, but man, I can't wait in like 20 years for Reggie to put out a book and read that, because that would sound fascinating to me.
So definitely.
We shall see.
Anyway, great question, Capsule J, and that's all we've got time for. Your emails, as I said at the top of the segment, please send in more emails to thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com, or drop us a comment in our Discord server, as I said at the top of the show. So, without further ado, shall we get on to the third segment, where we're going to be covering a bit of the news.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the last part of the show, wherein, we were up in the air. Is there going to be a Nintendo Direct? Of course not. Nothing was announced, and so we sit here, still waiting. Who knows at this point if there will ever be another Nintendo Direct again, Bally, Some people, they're just drowning.
Some people are completely convinced it ain't happening again, ever.
No, I know, yeah. They've just gone off the deep end. Just left the internet in exile. I feel like people maybe need to calm down a little bit regarding this.
Between that and like some Sony fans and like the Xbox fans, well, Xbox did drop a lot of info, but like info on PS5, like it's just this weird space where a lot of the news sites are just kind of churning out the same things again because we're waiting for these big drops. So.
We need some news from somebody. It's going to be a slow start to this year until we finally get some big drops from everyone, because 2020 is a big year. things are happening.
I think when the news does drop, it's going to come thick and fast.
Yes, I think so. And we will not be able to keep up with it. And we'll be like, thank God for those periods when we didn't have to, deal with all these things happening. Alas, we're currently in that period of time. But Nintendo did give us something. They gave us an Animal Crossing Direct, which I think I said at the end of last episode is a bare minimum we're going to have an Animal Crossing Direct by the next time, because this game is coming out in less than a month.
I think I said fans would be up in arms if it was only an Animal Crossing Direct last episode, and sure enough, a lot of people were
it depends on who you're talking about, right? Because I think there are a lot of people who just wanted to hear about Animal Crossing.
A vocal minority were up in arms.
Oh, of course. It's always a vocal minority. It's very passionate, but Animal Crossing New Horizons, lots of cool stuff from this presentation. I don't know, what were your thoughts on it generally, Bally? Just, as someone who hasn't played Animal Crossing in a long time, how are you feeling about this new game so far?
Pretty excited. It's one of it's one of those things where Animal Crossing kind of gets away with announcing very, in the grand scheme of things, quite minor things, but for the world of Animal Crossing, they are quite major things. So stuff like the terraforming, that's a really big deal. But to anyone who's maybe not an Animal Crossing fan looking in, they're probably like, what? It's just terraforming. It's like what you do in a game like that, I guess. I don't know. Is it? So yes, I'm excited. Can I remember the announcements off the top of my head? Not very much, because they kind of all blur into this one direct of goodness. It just kind of happiness, Animal Crossing is, and it all kind of merges together in my mind. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for me, I think it definitely. There were a lot of moments where I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Lots of when they show the museum and you're like, geez, they've given it a facelift. Really great looking. And, this is not technically the first time we've seen Animal Crossing in HD, because, there was that weird plaza that was on Wii U, but then they also did the board game on Wii U. So, we've seen HD assets for an Animal Crossing game, but this is the first real Animal Crossing game in HD on a Nintendo platform. So there's a certain joy to just seeing that. And it's this weird thing of over these years, it's oh, now here's another Nintendo franchise in HD. We just had it with Luigi's Mansion for the first time, and we're going to get it very soon with Metroid Prime for the first time. So there is still a novelty there, even though, HD started in 2005 with the 360, so 15 years ago, and we're only now just getting an HD Animal Crossing, one of Nintendo's biggest franchises, which is kind of funny in some ways, but there is a kind of uniqueness to it that we haven't seen before. So I think general things that stood out to me, maybe let's talk about the terraforming a bit more, because I think that is probably the standout aspect of this game, and I think it just speaks to a general design philosophy and ethos that they're going for, which is, okay, in the past you have focused on your own house and building it up, and then you became the mayor, and we gave you a little bit more to do. Now it's here's a blank slate, right? Here is an island for you to craft and mold to your every desire, make it exactly what you want it to be, and make it as unique as possible, right? We'll give you all the tools to do this. You can customize the rivers, the flow of the waterfalls, where there are hills and ledges, and... Can
you put your house on the beach?
If you want to, I imagine so, because you
beach house.
You walk around and you're like, here's where I'm planting my tent. So you start out with a tent, which I think you have done in some Animal Crossing games before, or at least you start
tent, or
with a tent or a hut or something. Maybe
you start with the smallest house.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But that kind of the real Animal Crossing doesn't start until a while into this game, probably, because a lot of the stuff before you even build in the shops, there's nothing there. So you're opening this island where it's
they say there's a couple of animals will be...
Right.
A couple of neighbors who you'll probably interact with in the space of 2 minutes, and then you'll be busy working on that other stuff to do with the island, I guess, which is cool.
So it starts small, and then it's all about you expanding it, inviting new villagers to it, and really just becoming the person who customizes it the most. And that, for me, speaks of they're taking from a lot of modern influences, right? You can see the Minecraft in there, you can see the Stardew Valley in there. They're definitely looking at the landscape for this type of simulation game, and I think smartly taking those ideas and running with them, because they've been successful and they have done well in those experiences. So why not transfer them to Animal Crossing, while also providing the unique kind of quality that is Animal Crossing, which is its whimsy and its color and its characters. And I think overall I'm very excited for the prospect of kind of making a town of my own. And like, I really loved the customization aspect of Stardew Valley, where you have this plot of land that you can do whatever you want with it, like build your own roads, make your own fences, and put buildings wherever you want to, move buildings at a whim if you want to.
Can you move your house in Animal Crossing?
I believe so. I think you can just move houses and stuff wherever you want to. I think it's just this approach to, like, you can dig up whole trees and they won't die, and you can just move trees about. And there's no issue with it. Whereas in the past, it's like, all right, chop down a tree, I have to plant a new tree, wait for the new tree to grow.
You kind of plant loads, and then some of them fail, and others take root, and then, yeah.
And so it's much easier now to set up, like, oh, here's a little foresty area with some really nicely placed trees exactly where I want them to be. And, you know, you can change it for the season and things like that. So for me, that is kind of, that's the big thing that stands out, is it's all about customizing to your heart's desire. And I appreciate they're doing things like bringing in the previous designs from older games through AR that you can just scan and like have that as a t-shirt.
And there's like real versatility with the interior of your home in terms, like, your character had to kind of pull around the furniture, put up the wallpaper. Now you can just go into like this kind of, like, it kind of looks like the Sims kind of mode, where you can just move furniture and stuff on the walls to your heart's content. Like,
so I believe that mode, the way that you move furniture around, was first debuted in Happy Home Designer on 3DS, and that was one of the best things about that game, which wasn't, I don't know, it was like this one aspect of Animal Crossing. Game, did you? No, I never played Happy Home Designer. That part of it was like, oh, I can see how they would take this into a new proper Animal Crossing game, and they have, which is smart to do so, because, like, I went back the other day, obviously I did a video on my old town in Wild World, and there were a couple moments where I was like, oh fuck, I took that into my inventory, I'm going to place it back. I'm standing in the exact same position. I'm standing in the exact same position that I took it out. I put it out and it goes in the wrong place, and I'm like, this, I was facing here when I took it out, why is it not going back? Anyway, you know, there were lots of little annoyances about moving furniture in that game in particular, and probably in New Leaf as well, that I'm glad they have now opted for. Hey, look, we know this is a pain, let's just streamline it, make it so much easier for you to just accessorize your house and, like, just make it look like the place you want it to be with as little hassle as possible. I think that just hassle-free idea has been a lot of the kind of pitch of this game.
Have you gotten over your four-leaf clover obsession yet?
I hope so. I don't know. Every time I saw one, I must have been like, yes, another four-leaf clover. I'm so lucky. I'm the luckiest person.
Like 20 in your house.
There were so many. I'd forgotten how many I had. So yeah, I'm sure that's still in the game. And, you know, they showed a bunch of new characters, new animal villagers. I don't know how many they're going to be. I think they said like 300 something at launch, but I'm sure they'll add more.
How many were there in Wild World? Do you remember?
I think probably 200, 150 or something to choose from and use randomly.
Kind of crazy considering there's only ever like 6 to 7 or 8 or so in your town at one time.
Well, I mean, that's one of the most unique things about Animal Crossing, is the fact that your town was your town. It was very custom built. So rarely would you have villages that were the same. And then the fun thing was, they could leave your town and go to your friend's town, you know, back in the day. Yeah. And so you'd like steal a villager from me and I'd be like, Bally, you took my villager.
It was real, when they told you they were like moving, it was quite kind of heart-wrenching.
It was, yeah, and like there were times where like Pom Pom, who's like my favorite villager, like she's been there since the beginning, she was like, I'm gonna leave, and I'm like, no, don't leave, and like I convinced her to stay, and like there's a real satisfaction in being able to do that, to like save someone from going away from your town forever.
Stand at the gate of the town waiting,
be like,
no,
nope,
you can't leave.
I'm not moving. Absolutely. So I think that's really cool. Was there anything else that stood out to you from this?
What was there? Yeah, like the ability to kind of to go from pole vaulting across lakes, or like getting out a little step ladder to go up a cliff face, to then the point at which you can just put in steps or a bridge. Yeah, like the cost of like the bridges and the steps was like really high, so they're definitely going to be big long-term goals that you have to go for. They're not willy-nilly.
Right, it's like the late game, you know. It's definitely. Eventually you will be able to put away those things from your inventory and not have them anymore. I think like some cool quality of life stuff in terms of a scroll wheel for your inventory, so you can just get up your items whenever you want to.
You have to unlock the scroll wheel though, which seemed little strange.
I mean, you have to unlock everything in Animal Crossing.
Everything.
Incremental progress is the name of the game, like that's why people play it for many reasons. And one of the cool additions, I think, for people who live in Australia is hemisphere and stuff, changing to southern versus northern hemisphere, which means that you can have your seasons be correct, which often was not the case for people down there.
Yeah. I always get this thing, though, where like Scotland generally is quite far north. So during the summer, it's only dark between about the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. So I remember playing Animal Crossing in the evenings, like after school or something.
Totally.
And it would be completely light outside and pitch black in my game, like dark in my game. So is it overreaching to say maybe what if they included something about how far north or south you were? It could include like the point at which it would get dark.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them to like update it or maybe even have that.
Yeah, it seems very in line with that whole north-south hemisphere thing.
Yeah,
but,
I don't know. I wonder if in the summer they do things like adjust, how long the afternoons and evenings are versus, everything else in the winter time and how early it gets dark. Maybe.
My memory,
we don't know.
Traditionally, it was quite equatorial, so sort of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Right,
more or less, like all year round, more or less.
Yeah. But, that's kind of logical, I guess, to some degree. All I remember is, Tom Nook's shop's about to close. I need to fucking run there to sell my shit before the shop is shut. And I hope there's a way around that, because that was always a frustrating element.
They changed it in New Leaf, I believe, where you could tell the game whether you were an early morning riser or like a night owl or something.
Yeah,
it was called.
You're right.
Yes. And it would mean that like Tom Nook would open his shop in the evening, but not the morning, or vice versa, depending on whether you played the game, say, before or after work. So it could like match.
That would be helpful.
Because I remember getting up in the morning to play Animal Crossing and the shop wasn't even open yet. I'm like, why did I even get up for this?
That's very true.
Then you come home from school and it's already shut and you're like, for God's sake.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like they just have no time for real people. You just got to be in Animal Crossing all the time to make the most of it.
It's a very good lunch break game.
It is,
might give that whirl.
Oh, that's a good idea. Another interesting thing is the Nook Miles and the crafting and stuff like that. So I think we've both been a little skeptical of crafting. I feel like there's a way that it can become mobile gamey that I don't like. How do you feel about it, having got a bit more information about kind of the stuff that you can make and the way that that's progressing?
It seems good. It still seems strange what is the purpose of the difference between Nook Miles and the regular bells are. And it's like this early game currency in a way where I guess it's kind of like to encourage you to craft stuff while you're still saving bells on the side for sort of more important stuff, I guess. It wasn't really clear.
Because maybe I'm wrong, but I saw that maybe you're paying off your loan with Nook Miles, and I don't know, like, because you usually do that with bells, but then...
Yeah, that would surprise me if that is the case. I didn't pick that up, but...
okay.
Yeah, I there were some... I was watching some Game Explain video, like, saying how there's some really high prices with Nook Miles to buy some really weird things, like very early game, and it's a bit kind of like, what do you spend these miles on? I don't know.
Right, like to what degree is it grindy, and how much work do you have to put in to even get anything good? That's kind of maybe the question there.
Yeah.
And I do like the Nook Mile achievement system. Like, it feels that they are giving you a bit more of a goal, right? Because Animal Crossing's goal, to whatever end there is one, is pay off your debt, right? Like, in many ways, it's Kentucky Route Zero. It's a game about debt. It's a game about being in debt. But it's also a game where you don't actually have to worry about that debt because there's no interest. You can pay it back at any pace you want. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a world in which you can just buy a home without consequence.
But there is more than one goal in that sense, where the goal of getting nice furniture and having a nice looking house is it actually increases your luck, and with that increased luck you can get more valuable like fish and bugs like occurring in the world, and then they can complete the museum on top of being a high value in order to sell for more money. Although I appreciate you're right, that money does contribute to your debt, but having a nice looking home I think is another kind of goal. And what do you call the association who gives you like a score? That's a big deal. I think I'm convinced there will be more to do with that aspect for sure. Although as little as I know about what they did with that stuff in New Leaf, I think they will, step it up here.
I think generally there's just going to be so much more to spend both Nook miles and your bells on, because...
I mean, if bridges are costing $100,000, I mean,
right.
you're going to need a lot of bells to
totally.
sculpt
and
your town in the way you want.
They have, they've thought about this a little bit, because there are random islands you can go to. One of the features is to just go off and explore these other places to get resources from them. So it gives you a chance, if you've exhausted everything on your place, then you can go and visit somewhere else to be like, oh, I need to get more of this, I need this for this
like
purpose.
Foreign fruit and stuff, like without going to another person's town.
Right, exactly. So there's, even if you don't know anyone who's playing Animal Crossing, which...
you were cherries, I was peaches.
Right, yes. No, I remember. I remember well.
Yeah.
And we traded them back and forth, and then was coconuts we found from somewhere, and it was all a great time. But just that, I think the economy of Animal Crossing is an interesting thing, because I think with all the stuff, the new stuff, and also from New Leaf had public works projects, which were things like a fountain or a bridge or whatever, and they were very limited in where you could place them and how many you could have and stuff like that. Whereas I think this is just much more open and allows you flexibility in where they go, how many of them you want, where everyone's like you get to place people's houses or tents or whatever. So, there's a situation in which I'm like, okay, this is the high street and this is where all the shops are, all the houses are, and then we go into a different place where it's completely forested and there's other stuff going on here. And like segmenting it out and just making a town your town, I think is it's something that I'm very excited about, like it seems like the level of customization that is the end goal of an Animal Crossing game. And this feels like to me just the most complete Animal Crossing experience we've had so far. And just incentivizing you. Is
there a furniture set you've got your eye on?
I was always a fan of the modern furniture, that.
Modern stuff looks awful.
I love it.
In real life, I love modern look to.
Yeah.
I've just bought a modern flat, but I love a modern look. But then in Animal Crossing, I really like the exotic furniture. It's like that really wood.
That stuff is good.
Look.
That stuff is nice.
I've decided I want a traditional Japanese room.
Yeah.
So it's going to have samurai armor and a katana and
I had loads of that stuff in mine.
Yeah, I know, and a tatami mat, and then you got to have a Nintendo room. A games room, but a Nintendo room, and then I'm going to have an exotic room. So those are my 3 rooms I've decided. So
okay, you've already made plans, but look at this.
I've got plans, and then I'm going to have the bridges like this, and
no, I definitely have a vision in mind, which is a fun thing, and so talking about those miles it's just, for me, it's a nice addition to reward you for stuff that you would have done anyway, right? Usually in an Animal Crossing game, you try and catch all the bugs, you try and catch all the fish. Now I'm getting rewarded for doing the stuff I would normally do in an Animal Crossing game, and it gives me a bit more of a carrot on the end of the stick.
Animal Crossing achievements, yeah.
Totally. They definitely have made it, because you look at something like Stardew Valley, and the end goal there is really complete the community center. Get all the items to the community center, and then also make your farm really cool and stuff like that. But that's more open, whereas there is a defined task almost, and Animal Crossing has in the past not had that defined task outside of paying off your mortgage, and now I think they're a bit more adding a bit more of that.
Are they going to add a cellar to age your wine though? That's what I want.
Yes, please.
Aged wines, set up a little restaurant in the corner of your town.
No, I'm here for that, for sure. I like that idea. I think in terms of new things, activity-wise, it doesn't seem like there's that much. We're still...
Yeah, there's no mention of KK at all yet, or what his venue will look like if that coffee house exists, if he's still underneath underground there, or is he going to have some stadium in the corner of the...
Who knows, right? Apparently this island is a lot bigger than previous towns we've had.
An underground stadium, or...
Yeah, I get it. I think that there is a core to Animal Crossing, and what they are doing really is just adding around those things as opposed to kind of changing the formula all that much. And that's fine, right? I've caught these fish a million times, these bugs a million times. I'll do it again. It's a fun thing to do, and... hopefully there are maybe a few other things that you can do. Obviously they're adding festivals and themed events as we go through the year, doing those as free updates as opposed to them already being built into the game, because Animal Crossing's now changed. There's no more need for Rossetti because it auto saves now, and it'll do its saving for you, so you're never in danger of turning your game off.
He's turned into that helicopter that or is it a plane?
The rescue service, which I thought was a bit weird. I think
is the island that big that you need?
No,
a rescue
I think that one of the reasons that's there is maybe if you just get stuck in some geometry, I can foresee a thing with a bunch of terraforming and weirdness that you somehow end up in a corner and there's some glitch that happens and you can't get out, so you need a way to get out, otherwise you're screwed.
Yeah, they probably play tested it a long time trying to make it, protected from that, but maybe it was too difficult for them and they thought, why don't we just have a rescue service? I would say the helicopter itself is themed like Rossetti, like it's got
so that's his new job essentially. He's joined that brigade there, so that's pretty fun. But yeah, and the other fun thing I thought was having people over to your town through multiplayer. You can adjust the level to which they interact. So, back in the day, you could find some random person on Wi-Fi and they would just murder everything, cut down all your trees, just take all your fruit, ruin everything, plant, pitfall seeds all over the place. And now you have a best friend option where I trust you, you can help me. And I think that's really cool because it lets your friend have way more control over a town than they maybe had in the past. Especially if you're both terraforming, you could both work together to make something, have your own vision for what the town's going to be for both of you and kind of helping each other out. I think that's a really neat idea. And, there were limitations when you did multiplayer with Animal Crossing in the past as to where people can go, what they can do, who they can talk to, what they can sell and buy and drop on the ground and all those factors. And I wonder if this best friend mode limits all those or takes away all those restrictions and allows you to have a much more free-flowing multiplayer experience, because I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, totally. I think I trust you. You're not going to chop down my trees.
Well, I don't know if you should trust me, Bally.
Or something, Then
well, here's the thing. I'll probably troll you once. I'll probably cut down one tree and be like, ha ha, but never do it again. You got to get the one out of your system, which is fair enough, I guess. So yeah, I think overall it's just it's the most excited I've been for this game since it got announced. Right, I think. I've always been Animal Crossing, I've played that a bunch. It's really good, but it's never going to recapture the magic of my first time playing Wild World. And going back to playing Wild World, I was like, maybe I'll just keep playing this. This is pretty good, Animal Crossing. I forgot how much fun this was. So I think I am very much ready to jump into a new one at this point in time.
Me too, absolutely. Can't wait. Not long now.
No, very, very soon. Cool. Let's wrap up this news with a little bit more. And we didn't get a Nintendo Direct, but we did get a Yacht Club Direct, or I guess they call it Yacht Club Presents. Yacht
Very
Club,
much done in the style of a Direct.
100%.
The presentation, the animations between segments, it was very much in line, but obviously with the orange theme.
Yes, totally. I like that they are... Yacht Club to me almost feels like a first-party Nintendo studio. The way in which the types of games they make are very Nintendo, their attitudes, their kind of whimsy. It'd be cool for Nintendo to buy Yacht Club. I don't think that's ever going to happen because they kind of work as an independent studio, but it's working out for them, I think. And they showed a few things. Only one new game, I believe, which was shown at the end, which was Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon or Pocket Dungeons. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, we'd already seen Cyber Shadow, right?
Yes, we had. That was shown off a while ago. And they are not developing Cyber Shadow. Cyber Shadow is a game they are publishing. Because Yacht Club is now publishing games, so there are other companies who are working. Shovel Knight Dig is not an in-house game. That's a game being worked on by a different studio. I believe the studio working on Shovel Knight Dig is the developer that made Bomb Chicken, that was a Switch eShop game. So that's really cool. That signature style of theirs kind of bleeds through in that art design that you can kind of see. So it's interesting that Yacht Club have become big enough now where they're able to publish other independent games, or at least help them, with PR and messaging and things like that. So I don't know if Pocket Dungeons is like that. I imagine that's also a different developer. Maybe it's a smaller in-house game. I'm not 100% sure on it. But that seemed the most interested I'd been in like that type of match 3 thing, I guess. Like there's a level of it to where it's kind of tactical, as in, you encounter enemies and you want to take down as many at the same time as you can, because when you hit them, you take damage as well as they take damage. So it's kind of a resource thing with your health. Kind of reminds me of Into the Breach a bit, like using your health as a thing to stop incoming damage or stop buildings being destroyed, right? But in this case, it's make sure your health is high enough to where you can take a hit and then heal yourself afterwards.
Right, there's sort of like potions scattered around that you have to get to. And yeah, it was a really weird take on the whole puzzle kind of matching units style of game. It's definitely like a genre I've not really tried much, and Shovel Knight is a good way to get into that kind of thing. And like it looked for what it was, it looked very impressive and really well thought through. Like you said, like you take damage from enemies and then you heal, and you kind of have to strategically work your way around each kind of scenario. Like it looked cool, but it's kind of like so starkly different from Shovel Knight that you're kind of like, and as you say, you don't know who's developing it, but you kind of like think it's very much outside of Yacht Club's comfort zone from what we know that they've done so far.
Right, exactly. And I think that the major point they made was, hey guys, we're working on 2 new projects, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was a big announcement.
We can't show you anything about them. They're very early in development.
Like blurred screens, that good old trick.
Yeah, absolutely. Showing it in development. And my guess would be one of them is a brand new IP, one of them is a Shovel Knight sequel of some design, right? That makes the most sense. I think that's a strong way to move forward, because Shovel Knight's an incredibly strong brand and is very popular, and it is smart to keep going with it. But also I think Yacht Club is such a talented studio. I'd love to see what they do with new IP, with something completely different. And they did say, if you're a fan of Shovel Knight, you'll like these games we're working on. So, probably going to stick in the realm of 2D side-scrolling action, which is exciting stuff, because that's what they're best at. And of course they had those other games. So Shovel Knight Dig, I don't know if it got a release date or not. Can't quite remember, but I think that will probably be out pretty soon.
I think they said next year actually for Shovel Knight Dig.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. Cyber Shadow's fall, and then, or maybe it was the puzzle one that's next year, or maybe they're both next year. I can't remember. Yeah,
too many release dates, things floating about. But I think they're going to take that to PAX, or at least a couple of those games will be at PAX. So that's exciting stuff. And yeah, Cyber Shadow is the one I'm the most excited about, I think, from what we've seen of their, output that's going to be coming down the road. And that got a fall release date, which I was a little surprised. I thought it might be a bit earlier than that, because we have been seeing Cyber Shadow for over a year now, at least. I think it was
hopefully it won't get delayed as a result of being in fall, like they're preempting it.
Yeah, potentially. I think we're probably safer with a game like that for hitting a release date, because from what they have shown, it looks pretty complete. I know that, could be all smoke and mirrors. Trailers can be whatever you want them to be. But the game looks very polished. It looks really, really good. And
really diverse, like the bosses and locations. And
yes,
there's a lot in that trailer.
It's absolutely my type of game. It's in the same stylings as Shovel Knight, The Messenger, like these modern 2D pixel art independent games with a callback to nostalgia while also being very modern in design. It's like my favorite thing. So I am very excited to play Cyber Shadow, and that's going to be a day one Game Pass game as well. So, now both of us can play that straight away without having to, spend money on it, which is very cool. We are spending money. We're paying for Game Pass. We need to
spending some money.
Everyone gets in the habit of being PS Plus free games. It's like you spend 50 quid a year on PS Plus. It's not free games. Get that out of your system. So yes, overall a nice little thing. Like nothing groundbreaking from it. It's great to get confirmation that yes, Yacht Club are working on new projects. Finally, after 5 years of Shovel Knight, they can do a new game. It's exciting stuff.
They even did a timeline at the start of the direct, which I thought was great, because it's just reminding everyone, we've been working on this a really long time. So if you haven't played it yet, do you mind playing it? We really appreciate that. Because we fulfilled every stretch goal and all these characters and all these campaigns. So you might want to check that out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But to be fair, I think most people who watch a Yacht Club Direct, people who've played Shovel Knight, so maybe they're preaching to the choir a little bit. So I think that probably is about it. We're still waiting on that fabled Nintendo Direct. Will it ever appear, Bally? Who knows?
I think it will happen before Animal Crossing comes out. If Animal Crossing comes out and it's not happened, I think there's a very strong chance nothing's happening till E3.
That's pretty savage. I hope that's not the case. Because
do you think one could happen after Animal Crossing comes out?
Well, here's the thing. All the rumors are suggesting that Xenoblade Remake is coming out in May. So they have to talk about that before that comes out.
Just do a Xenoblade Direct.
Yes, guaranteed.
Talk about that.
It'll just be Monolith Soft, and I'll be like, fucking yes, Monolith Soft Direct. I'm here for it. And everyone else will be like,
you're going to pick up that remake in May then?
I'm very tempted. Talking about replaying games again, I would like to replay Xenoblade for sure. So even though
is that gonna might clash with Last of Us 2? Is there anything else big
you're right.
At that time?
Yep, that'll be a big one. I don't know what else is coming around the corner there, but there's probably the major clash, which Xenoblade is the type of game where I can just chip away at it. It's always there on Switch.
You've never chipped away at a Xenoblade. You absorbed them in a week.
I chipped away at the first game.
Over the course of many years, but
of 3-4 years.
You inhaled Xenoblade 2.
I didn't just inhale. I like how I fucking choked on it. I inhaled it so fast. Both of those games, X and 2, I think both of them. I put 70 hours in under a week. Both times. I am an addict to Monolith Soft games.
That is unreal levels.
Dude, it just doesn't even feel like it. Their games are so goddamn absorbing. I just get lost in them. I love that studio. They are absolutely up there in my top Nintendo owned studios for sure. So I'm excited to see what they do, because I feel like there's an announcement coming for their new game, whatever it is. If it's a Xenoblade 3 or if it's that fantasy RPG, I'll take it. I'll take whatever I get from those dudes. They are top tier. Cool. Well, let's close things out then, Bally. Telling people about all the things. Quick update on the feed, the podcast RSS feed, which has been giving us nightmares, and we thought it would be over at some point in time, and it continues to be a nightmare. I think there's been improvement. We now have 130 episodes in the feed of the total 180 whatever there are. So there are more there now. There are still 50 episodes missing, and according to the new provider, we're probably going to have to do them ourselves, re-upload them manually. So I will begin that process, I think, soon, of slowly putting them all back up, and eventually they'll all be there again. This is very frustrating. I don't know why it happened.
In the meantime, YouTube playlist is still all there if you want to check
absolutely.
out old episodes.
youtube.com/ThisNintendoLife. Everything's
Well, there's
available.
enough episodes there where you could download the podcast and keep up with them, and then the second the number's not there, you can just check it out on YouTube and chip back in.
Yeah.
There are only 50 out of 100 and however many, 60.
Yeah, who knows. Cool, so that hopefully will be resolved in due time. We also would like to thank some of our patrons. If you go to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, you can get things like bonus episodes where we talk about things like Star Wars, or we talk about our top 10 3DS games, which was the extra episode we did for February. So you can go over there and check those out. And Bally would like to thank some of our patrons today.
Thank you to our two $10 tier patrons. They are my fiancée Caroline and Atari Alex. Thank you for your support. And thank you to all of our other patrons. It's hugely appreciated. The money you give us to support the show. We spend a lot of time on this show, and we like to put out some extra quality podcasts that hopefully are worth the asking price.
Absolutely. So check that stuff out if you feel so inclined. You can also find us in lots of places across the internet. We're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on Apple Podcasts, we are maybe on Google Play now. I don't know if they put us there. I should check that probably. But yeah, you can download us in any podcasting app you have. Just search This Nintendo Life, subscribe, tell people about it, review us on iTunes. We had a good review recently in the UK store, so let's see if we can get some more in the US store. That would be very, very nice. So go over there, give us a nice rating, write us a nice little review. That would be very appreciated. And I think that is pretty much it. You know what, Bally? We're getting close to Animal Crossing, but I'm really excited for Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That's like my hype train right now.
I'm now on that hype train with you. It is exciting.
I don't know if that game will come to Switch or if it, comes later. Who knows? But
I reckon end of the year.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Well, in any case, I'm sure we'll be talking about that soon. But until then, thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back another episode in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. The musical interludes used on today's show were Up the Spirit Cavern Walls from Ori and the Blind Forest, copyright Microsoft and Moon Studios 2015, and the main theme from Rhythm Thief, copyright Sega 2012.